Okay. All right, we'll officially call the Finance Administrative Committee meeting to order. Roll call, just want to state that both myself and Commissioner Schnell are both present. Also ask the village clerk, who's taking official minutes for the meeting, to note all the staff that are in attendance for this meeting. Need a motion for approval of the minutes from May 7th, 2012.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, brings us down to number 3 on the agenda. On December 4th, 2012, the Village Council directed staff to prepare changes to the village existing fowl regulations that would allow the vast majority of single-family residents to keep chickens. The proposed changes are outlined in the staff report, which was posted on the village website over a week ago. All village council members have read the report and discussed it with the village manager. Alternative regulations would reduce the setback for chicken coops from 50 feet to 20 feet, increasing the number of homes that could keep chickens from about 500 to over 13,500. Permits would be required for the construction of coops. The alternative regulations are summarized on the whiteboard right here. I would like to start the discussion by hearing from the public. If you would like to make comments, please have a seat here at our table. Please limit your comments to the issue at hand and respectful to others. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. And with that, I will open up for any public comments. Please. And then same procedure.
You're taking the time-restricted ones first, right? I mean, the people that have to go someplace.
Yeah, those that have a commitment at 7 o'clock, I mean, it is a little before 6:15. We will respect your commitment, so if you'd like to go first. I believe we only have one guest, right, that we know of?
Right. That's what I was told.
Okay. We just need your name and address.
Hi, I'm Kevin Bialfis, and I live at 5704 Hillcrest Road, Downers Grove.
Welcome.
I have a meeting at 7, but I just came. I live across the street from the Conters, and before they had chickens, I didn't know really anything about them except what you would hear, you know, that you picture them being in coops and clucking all the time and, you know, maybe smelling or something like that. But we've taken care of them on weekends and stuff when they're gone, and sometimes we have to look to find them because they're in their coop and we've never heard noises from them. They're pretty quiet, and they don't seem to smell, stuff like that. So I don't know. We're not ourselves looking to get chickens, but I feel like it's kind of changed my mind knowing somebody that has them, that they seem pretty unobtrusive. So that's about all that I have to say.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Yeah, please come forward. We try to make this pretty informal, so. All right. Like dining room table.
Steve Connors, 5709 Hillcrest Road. We did put together this brief presentation tonight. I will make sure to keep it to 5 minutes here. And just do want to appreciate make sure we appreciate the councils, the staff time, and even all the residents. This is an important issue to us. It's an important issue to a lot of people, and just glad that people are making the time to have an open discussion for this. Regarding the noise, it's one of the most important things to realize is that it's roosters that are loud, and the ordinance change that we're talking about is actually a change for the positive. We currently allow roosters, and we're talking about not allowing roosters. When it comes to hens are actually fairly quiet. They make a soft clucking noise. You can see by the chart that they're actually a lot quieter than a lot of common suburban noises, lawnmowers, leaf blowers, you know, even kids playing and radios playing and cars going by and barking dogs. So, you know, just to make sure that we understand that yes, chickens do make noise and hens do make a noise, but it's compared to other suburban noises, it's relatively quiet. Waste and odor issues, you know, chickens do produce a lot less waste than other typical pets that people might keep. The chart here shows you that even a total of 10 chickens, which is almost double of what we're talking about having here, is less than what one 40-pound dog would produce. Plus, chicken waste doesn't have to be disposed of like pet waste does. It's actually compostable, and it's beneficial for your gardens and for your lawn. What comes down to being the odor issue when it comes to keeping backyard hens could be the coop. It's when it's an enclosed structure that can build up an ammonia smell. So as long as the coop is well maintained, which the staff recommendations do have proper methods for keeping that cleaned, then really odor should not be an issue. And it's also important to understand that the buildup of ammonia that can happen in a coop is unhealthy for chickens. So obviously chicken owners are going to want to make sure their coops are kept clean for the health of their own chickens. When it comes to predators here, there's a quote up here that I'll let you read that's from Bob Blewett, which is a wildlife biologist from the DNR. This was actually taken out of another person's presentation that was in another community proposing the same kind of changes here. But it's important to understand that animal predators already exist, and they exist for many other reasons. They're not in Downers Grove because of chickens, and they're likely not going to increase because of chickens. They're here because of shrinking habitat. They're here because they already have other prey, whether it's pets, pet food, bird feeders, garbage, and they live in our forest preserves, our undeveloped lots, and so it's just important to understand that we believe that chickens are not going to result in any increase in predation as long as they are properly kept, as the staff report indicates, and protected. Public health, the staff report, if people read it, they'll also note that yes, chickens can be carriers of salmonella, but they're no more likely to carry that than other pets that can be kept, other pet birds, and even reptiles. And even many foods that we handle on a daily basis can carry salmonella more often than chickens can. And it's also important to understand that all wildlife and all animals, including cats and dogs, can carry quite a lot of different diseases that are transferable to humans. So, again, we think that it's important we like to think about chickens in the way that you might think about other pets when it's trying to figure out how do they fit in with a community like ours. Some people express concerns about property values. As staff report indicates, there is no conclusive evidence either way about property value. So here's some interesting data. You can take what you think of it and form your own opinions, but this was a Forbes article. Talks about the top 10 housing markets. This was back in August 2011 that are appreciating in value. They all backyard chickens, and there was a note there: the 10 sickest housing markets of that same article only 3 allowed backyard chickens. And a little interesting fact there that 93% of your major U.S. cities do allow hens. Regarding enforcement issues, staff report again indicates this is not going to be an added burden if the ordinance change goes forward. Another little interesting fact here, just in 2012 there were, you could see the number of complaints were far more for dogs than there were for chickens in the past year. DePaul findings, they did a study that actually interviewed some other members of communities that already did adopt ordinance for allowing hens, and in general they found most cities were satisfied with the ordinances and that major complaints and infractions were rare. The benefits that we've got, that we believe that there are for allowing backyard hens, is that it's about education and community. Chickens are something that can let kids sort of get a better connection with nature, a better connection to food source and responsibility for caring for the chickens. It can be outreach to local groups, whether it's Boy Scout groups or Girl Scout troops or anything like that. And you could share, collaborate resources with other owners in the community and your neighbors. We do find that a lot of people that we know do bring their kids over and love to share the experience. Another benefit is that it's going to be healthier hens. In regards to what happens with factory farm hens and eggs and what you get at restaurants and most stores. If you keep backyard flock, you're talking about a natural diet, you're talking about an open area and reduced stress, which leads to healthier eggs. And the fact that, you're no antibiotics, no growth hormones or other introduced chemicals that you get with some of your other eggs and chickens at stores and restaurants. Healthier hens lead to healthier eggs. With the less stress, it actually means that they could have more vitamin A, E, I think I'm saying the right things, beta carotene and omega-3. So healthier hens, healthier eggs, and you could argue that healthier people. Sustainable living. I've only got a couple more slides. We feel this is an important piece of sustainable living, and that's something this community already embraces. When you talk about rain barrels and you talk about perennial pavers and you talk about not using chemicals on your lawn and alternatives to energy and riding your bike, we think producing your own food and raising it naturally is something that fits within those community values. There is an increasing interest going on. Here's quite a few communities that are listed that do have them. Their ordinances all vary, but it is a growing list. in the Chicagoland region. Again, we believe it's part of it's a good, fits into our community value system. We see Downers Grove as a progressive community, and we think that having this fits within that, and you could argue that it's sort of under the strategic goals of Steward of environmental sustainability for many of the reasons I've already mentioned. No default findings here, just saying that they found the ordinance change to allow chickens, and a review of different communities that did this helped promote sustainability in the community. And with that, I thank you for the time.
Thank you. Anyone next?
I'll go next.
Okay, I guess what we'll do is we'll go row by row. So why don't you come, and then if you want to line up, we'll go right after this gentleman.
Yeah, go ahead. You can go. Yep.
While you're coming up, I just want to apologize to everyone for being a few minutes late. Apparently, every winter, the tracks get cold and Metro doesn't know how to be on time. Never gets cold in Chicago, so my apologies.
That's all right.
Greetings, my name's Anthony Chang from 5507 Aubrey Terrace. How are you doing, everybody?
Good evening.
I'm kind of in the middle when it comes to this matter, so I've got more questions than anything else. Hopefully this can bring up a discussion that help answers and assuages those concerns. I noticed that there was a mention that there is no slaughter involved in this new ordinance, that we're not allowed to do that. And kind of going along with Steve had said about sustainable living, I would imagine that that would be part of the life cycle of the said fowl, that you would want to use them as a food source, and not just eggs, but other forms as well. I'm kind of curious on why that was. And if we aren't going to allow for the slaughter of them and consumption of them in body form, what do we do about this disposal of them? I mean, obviously, I think one mention was in the compost heap. Is that?
Yeah, I think that's
That's
what was
what
in
it
the
said,
report,
ovarian.
yeah.
And I guess alternatives to that as well.
And additional, your question is, besides the compost, where
Right.
else? And if
It's
that
a
is something
very-
that would ARC, or the garbage hauler would allow.
Yeah.
Correct. Or is there like do we take them to the Humane Society to be handled if and that's another question that comes about is when we get shipments of eggs unknown of the sex of the particular egg and they come out to be roosters, what do we do with those? If there is a no slaughter rule, what do we do? If we can't kill them to dispose of the roosters, at that point, what options are we left with disposing those?
Okay.
In order to ensure that the roosters or hens, I should say, are assigned in a appropriate manner, do we register the individual hens to make sure that there's no proliferation of or unnecessary slaughter of them? And what about raccoons targeting the area around the chickens? Myself, I have no dogs in my area, in my particular house, but I have dogs all around, and raccoons all like to swarm my yard. So obviously, measures will be taken to ensure that the chickens are well maintained and well protected, but the areas around, let's say they don't have dogs to protect their garbage cans or their little ones that happen to be playing, and raccoons come out, what's the propensity of that to occur? Now, I was kind of curious about a measure that was given about the number of complaints for chicken owners versus dog owners. I'm kind of curious what the ratios of the number of chicken owners are in the area versus the number of dog owners, and see if that's comparable if you balance that out. About teaching about food sources and sustainable living, that kind of goes back to the original about the slaughter. Can we slaughter them? Because honestly, I would like with my wife to be able to have a sustainable source of food, but having as many children as we do, I don't think purely eggs would just cut it. And I'm kind of curious about of Galesburg being in Chicago. That's more nitpicky than anything else. But most of the cities listed in that's one of the last few slides that Steve presented were represented Chicagoland. But I'm curious why Galesburg was listed as one. Was that a defining metric in some of the analysis that was performed? And those are some of the concerns I have. And if this being a potentially contentious issue, is this possible to set kind of like the 94 gun ban, set a sunset clause to it if it's so contentious? And those are just my more questions and concerns, and hopefully we can extrapolate on those as the discussion continues.
Thanks, but this
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Actually, it's probably more staff. As questions come up, are you taking notes and then they will be answered at a later time? Or if we have answers, will they be answered during our discussion? Or procedurally, how are we going to answer questions that people from the public ask or we ask?
We are tracking all the questions. Some of these we already have answers for and can provide at the appropriate time as the committee sees fit. We will also post the questions and answers on our website as we progress through this discussion. So some can be answered tonight at the appropriate time, and some will have to get back to everybody later.
Okay, just so you know when your questions may be answered. So.
Okay, and then that's kind of summarizing, trying to be as quick as possible, allow the people the opportunity to discuss, and maybe if things come around, I will have more points to discuss as the night continues.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, my turn? Okay. Okay, Wayne Anderson, 4805 Cross Street, and all of you have probably gotten tired of me sending you emails and information. Hopefully you've read a few of them, but I just wanted to go over a few things. And first thing, the one thing that's bugging me is this flock size with this 4 chickens over 18 weeks, 4 chickens under 18 weeks. There is no one sitting at this table, I doubt there's anyone, or possibly 1 or 2 from the chicken lobby, that could tell, and I cannot tell, the difference between a 17-week-old chicken and a 19-week-old chicken. The only thing I can tell is when this was adopted from DuPage County, this was a food ordinance kind of also, where you were progressively raising chickens, getting eggs, and eating the chickens. Okay, a chicken doesn't lay eggs until it reaches a certain age. It lays an abundance of eggs, shall we say, till it reaches a certain age. Then it slows down, and then all my relatives were farmers. Then it ended up on the table for supper. Okay. And you had new chickens coming up that laid a lot. So if nothing else, when you change this ordinance, which as far as I'm concerned, leave it the way it is, but get rid of the under 18 weeks, the over 18 weeks. I've checked a lot of village ordinances. They say 4 chickens or 5 chickens. Or when you get farther out, you can have 7,000 chickens, okay? But nobody can tell the age difference between under 18 and over 18, all right? They don't have birth certificates, you know, and stuff. So just go 4 chickens. If you want to be nice, 5 chickens. Next, if the people are raising chickens for sustainability, which I'm getting tired of hearing, because every website I go to is sustainability, they should be raising them for not only eggs, but for meat. Because otherwise, as the other gentleman says, what do you do with this other chicken or the old chicken, or you get a chick that's a rooster? No place guarantees the chicks they send, they try their best, but there might be a rooster in there, okay? And then if you have a rooster in there, you have to either give it away, euthanize it, or if it is a place that allows rooster, raise it till it's big enough to throw in the cook pot, okay? Next thing on these proposals, you've got this, what to do with a dead chicken. Put it in the compost pile or bury it in the yard. As I sent the email to everyone on the council, in the fowl ordinance, when you get down into pets and all this other stuff, in the village of Downers Grove ordinance, it says it is illegal to bury a dead animal in the village of Downers Grove. You have to take it out of the village to dispose of the body. So you can't have a law that says bury them in your backyard when the other ordinance says you can't do that with any animal in the village of Downers Grove, okay? And put it in the compost pile. Let's get off that. All right. At great length, they're showing all the places that have an allowed chickens, okay? And I sent everyone on the council places with their chicken ordinances, Centralia, Illinois, and everything, all right? Just a quick recap. Lombard, you can have chickens only if you're a laboratory for experimental or test. Plainfield, Illinois, 100 feet from any residence containing human beings, okay? Westmont, our next door neighbor, they allow chickens. 150 feet from any neighbor's house, okay? I mean, there are places that allow chickens. They have all kinds of restrictions, some low restrictions, some high restrictions, but it's not a case of, because this survey shows a chart from a bunch of places that allow chickens, fine. Wayne, Illinois allows chickens, high-class area. All you need is 10 acres of land and you can have chickens on it. Oak Brook, 1 acre of land and you can have chickens, all right? So it's not a case of this guy and or this suburb has chickens, so everyone should have chickens. And my mother used to tell me, if Tommy runs in front of a bus, are you going to run in front of a bus just to follow him? No, okay. All right, there is no one until my dying breath that's going to convince me that if I have a house up for sale and my neighbor has got chicken coops and chickens in their backyard, that most potential buyers coming to my house are going to start knocking a few thousand off of what they want to pay because of the chickens, okay? It's the same thing if you had rabbit cages. It's the same thing if it was allowed to have 4 dogs and all 4 dogs from the backyard. Anything a person can take off a proper valley, they are. If you've got chickens and chicken coops in a suburban place, fine, all right? Sustainability, okay? Back to that. Sustainability means supposedly you're sustaining the life flow and you're getting food and you're getting wholesome food and all this other stuff, and you are controlling the food source and stuff. So therefore, if you're going to get eggs, 4 chickens are going to give you 2 dozen eggs a week when you got good laying hens, all right? There's different breeds. There's 58 breeds of chickens, all right? And different ones do different things. Some lay more. There's an Easter egg breed. It lays light green and light blue eggs, called an Easter egg. So you can get all kinds of chickens that do different things, but 4 or 5 chickens are going to give more than enough eggs, and you should maybe have a restriction about giving eggs out to everybody because you have a liability of possibly getting them sick. All right, and last thing, overall, my general feeling is the only people that should be watching over a flock in Downers Grove are the clergy. That's my final comment. Okay?
Very clever.
Thank you. I write my own material.
Come back next week.
Are you available for contract?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, we'll go to the next row. I know you're a reporter. You want to talk to us? No? We'll read about it in the paper. Welcome.
Thank you. How nice to be so informal.
We
My
tried
name is
to.
John Phillips. I live at 5708 Hillcrest Road, and I'm here to strongly urge you to modify the ordinance to allow our neighbors to raise some chickens. I find that we live in an ever-increasing technological age, and my grandchildren are losing more and more chances to work directly with living organisms outside of housebound pets. And the fact that our neighbors raise some chickens, my grandchildren, one of the first things they want to know is, can we go see the chickens? And somehow, the ability to interact with a live being, a live animal in its own environment does make a difference in terms of their learning about their place in nature and our place as humans within it. So I think it's very important for their growth as humans and as part of this world to have a chance to observe the behavior of animals within their own environment. And I hope that at least a majority of the council will agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you guys could hold your applauses, we would greatly appreciate it, because then we'll have those that support them and those not, and, you know, we want to keep this like a family discussion, so, you know.
Not a rugby match.
Yeah, not a rugby, correct. So if you don't mind, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll be the bad guy, so that's why I said aye. So, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Dawn Susan Conters of 5709 Hillcrest Road,
And to address something that was brought up earlier about what to do with extra roosters, because we have hatched eggs and come with, you know, unfortunately, 8 roosters and 2 hens out of the group that we've hatched. And the U of I Extension Office does have contacts for not only people like me, but also a lot of the grade schools will hatch chicks, and they need somewhere to bring those chicks. And so they have contacts of farmers who will take the animals. You know, it gives us a good feeling that these animals were raised well and in a humane way, and then, you know, most of us do eat chicken and eat eggs, and so they move on in life and somebody else takes care of them. We don't do the slaughtering ourselves, or whatever they use them for, perhaps breeding. But it is just a fact of our food system that a lot of times there are surplus males, but there are ways to dispose of them properly. And the staff report, you know, notes that it's about 509 parcels right now that fall into the current guidelines for who can have chickens. And so since chickens are already allowed in Downers Grove, I feel like this isn't a yes or no kind of issue. It's a how can we come up with an ordinance that is fair and equitable to a larger population of residents. I understand that a village needs ordinances to help guide and manage a community. And when you look at pet ownership, most residents of Downers Grove can own dogs. And first, the village assumes responsible ownership and then places regulations on this ownership by way of ordinances that require leashes, require owners to pick up after their dogs, ban excessive noise levels, things like that. And I think chicken ownership should be treated the same way, that because they are quiet, docile, small animals, they're easy to manage and care for in an urban setting. They pose no greater health risk than other companion animals. And I mean, we found a whole slew of information on the CDC's website about what dogs and cats can transmit to humans, and it's a big list. So, and they're far less of a nuisance issue than dogs. So I see no reason why my neighbors should be able to tell me what I can do on my property when what I'm trying to choose is something that is, you know, can be done in a responsible way and is a low impact to them. Everything we do as neighbors impacts each other, but I think it's a low impact. So for these reasons, I feel that modifying the ordinance so that more residents have the option of owning hens is not only fair, that it's the right thing to do for our community. And we're not alone. I know we're kind of the vocal ones right now because we got caught with chickens, but we went door to door and to get signatures. We did have an online petition as well, but we're not really skilled in social media like Facebook and Twitter, so we just hit the road, and just a small handful of us gathered over 250 signatures. So I can give those for public record. And, you know, the response that I can speak from my own personal experience of just walking door to door in part of the community that I was not familiar with people. And it was about 70%, you know, positive response. Not all of those people who signed, you know, or that I talked to wanted to have chickens themselves, but they found no reason to prohibit their neighbors from having a small flock of hens. Some people were really, you know, open arms. I got invited into people's houses. They're like, we were just talking about chickens, you know, around the dinner table, and they're signing the petition, and their mom was there. So, you know, it was a really positive response from the community. So I think more people do want this, or at least want the option of letting their neighbors have them. And 17 years ago, my husband and I chose to put our roots down in this community because of the large lots and feeling a close connection to the environment here. And I think backyard hens fall right in line with the Downers Grove commitment to the environment. They provide a small-scale solution to the growing challenge of consuming food that is safe and has been grown, harvested, and transported sustainably. Or responsibly. I mean, there's nothing like walking, you know, 25 feet out to your chicken coop and collecting some eggs and having it transported from Texas with all the fossil fuels used. So I hope as a community we can embrace this movement of sustainable living and a right for us each to do what's, good for our families on our property unless there's compelling reason, that it's going to be harmful to our neighbors, and vote for a change in this outdated ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Outdated. Yes, next row. It's almost like church. You started it.
I'm in the front row. Nobody is in the front row in church. I'm in the front.
Welcome, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
I'm reading a letter from my dad. I'm Faye Williams. I'm 15. I go to Downer South. And I'm really actively involved with animals. I'm in my 4-H group for DuPage County.
Okay.
Really involved with chickens, and I ride horses, so I'm really into like animals and that kind of thing.
So before you get started, we just need your address.
Oh, 1509 Maple Avenue.
Great. Maple.
And since you're from Downers Grove South, you get another 5 minutes. Because our chairman is from Downers Grove South.
Yes,
cool.
that's very true, yeah.
All right.
As I turn 3 shades of beet red. All right.
My dad's letter. Dear Commissioners, please modify Downers Grove's current chicken ordinance per Commissioner Rayton's recommendations. My daughter, myself, and her friends have been active members of DuPage County's 4-H program for several years. Their involvement with chickens right alongside dogs and cats has taught and enriched them in many ways and provided them with years of healthy, inexpensive fun. Our times are so fast-paced and digital device heavy. I believe it is imperative that we take the opportunity as responsible stewards to provide our children and ourselves with fundamental experiences that connect us with nature, provide healthy, inexpensive, whole family activities, teach our young people responsibility, and are simply pleasurable. Making it easier for residents to raise a few chickens is an ideal opportunity leaders in Downers Grove could seize to help achieve in these goals. I have heard there is concern about chickens attracting coyotes to our neighborhood. Since we moved to Downers Grove 23 years ago, I have run a minimum of 7 miles 3 times per week, not counting marathon and triathlon training phases here and there. There's a lot of touring around our neighborhood. In that time, I have been chased by 2 pit bulls, 2 German shepherds, and a black lab. Someone's Shih Tzu has chased me, nipping at my heels 3 times in the past 2 weeks. In these 23 years, I have seen 1 coyote, and he took off in the other direction when I got within a block of him. I have never been chased by a chicken. Being forced to stop my run and trying to avoid getting bitten by off-leash dogs has been a far greater nuisance than chickens or coyotes, and I'm guessing county records reflect my experience with data. Let's license and regulate chicken raising in a responsible and healthy way so that we can boast as a village that we are taking creative, outside-the-box steps to improve our lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else moving our way towards the back? Yeah, nobody's talking.
When you get to it, I want some.
Oh, that's fine.
Taking a picture of the back of my head.
Martin's pretty happy about that.
Say rebuttal time, that sounds like what I was doing all day.
Welcome.
Good evening. My name's Ron Nowicki. I live at 907 Summit Street. I'm a 32-year resident of Downers Grove. I'm a landscape architect. I help people to connect or reconnect to the natural world. I teach permaculture, which is permanent culture, permanent agriculture. And we do tours at our property as an introduction to suburban permaculture. Our landscape has no lawn, and it's an incredibly biodiverse and magical place, really, in addition to being beautiful. And in terms of chickens, you know, I heard a comment at the December 4th meeting that it was a quality of life issue, and I couldn't agree more. If you've ever seen pictures of a confinement shed with 10 to 20,000 chickens crammed in with little egg conveyor belts coming from them, I think the quality of life that those chickens have is, it's a concentration camp. I don't eat those eggs anymore. I don't know what goes into them, and I don't know what's going into me as a result. And also, you know, it's a quality of life issue for my grandkids. When I have my grandkids out and they go to the chicken coop and they say, Grandpa, can we go collect some eggs? And they want to stay in there. I mean, you know, this gentleman here was saying, you know, connecting to the natural world. I think one of the main reasons we are in the converging crises that we're in now as a society is our estrangement from nature. And if we can turn that around and reconnect with the forces that actually give us life, I think we'll all be better off. And I guess my last comment is that having chickens creates community. The neighbors want to come over and see them. You know, we've got chickens, and we've done a cooperative thing with the neighbors, 3 neighbors. And we never used to talk much before, but now we do, and send emails back and forth. We're out there, you know, sharing duties of taking care of them. It's incredible what has happened just with a few little birds. And I heard a comment too about, well, what do you do with the dead chicken? Well, what do you do with the leftovers from KFC? You put them in the garbage. I mean, the bones, right? And some chicken meat left on them. You know, the only thing different would be the feathers. That is a non-issue as far as I'm concerned. And then there's one other point I wanted to make, but I can't remember it. Anyhow, it is a quality of life thing. And it's a very important quality of life thing for me, for my health, for the health of the chickens, for the health of our environment. You know, like this other gentleman said, you can use the manure from the chickens on a compost pile, spread it on your garden, and it's one of the best fertilizers you can possibly have. We grow probably half of our own food in our own backyard. We've got a passive solar home that we designed and built 32 years ago, and we live very, very, very low on the scale of consuming fossil fuels. And that's a big issue, I think, in the future for everyone, is that we're going to be running out of fossil fuels. There's only so much on the planet, and once we use it up and burn it up, if we don't burn up the planet in the process because of the CO2 emissions, we're going to have to live differently. And I think the village of Downers Grove could really stand out as an example for the whole Chicagoland area in terms of living within natural limits. In fact, I would encourage the village to put a big sign up over by the village hall, maybe facing the tracks, saying, "Welcome to Downers Grove, becoming the greenest suburb of Chicago." Why not? Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave, through the staff research, do we ask our garbage hauler about disposal of chicken carcass or chicken body, or however you wanted to?
No, we did not. Some of the websites we looked at said that is an option in most places, so we can double check with our garbage hauler.
Okay. All right, would you like to present? And then we have the gentleman right here behind the pillar.
I didn't get it.
Forgive me.
Hi, my name's Patrick McGuire. I live at 6115 South Brookbank. I wound up on the naughty list too.
Excuse me,
Yes.
we can't hear. I mean, one problem is they have their back to us,
Okay.
so we can't hear or see their facial expressions. And nextly, we can't hear them, the volume's way too low.
If we could ask everybody to speak into the microphones, that should get it to the,
Can you hear this? Can you hear this? Out in the audience?
we'll have Doug adjust it real quick here.
Very broken. I think maybe the adjusters. There you go. Is that better? Yeah, that's better.
Thanks for telling us.
I'm Patrick McGuire, 6115 South Brookbank. My first comment was I wound up on the naughty list too. Chickens in the garage. Sounds a little sneaky, but that wasn't the intention. I will start out with my comments. I really appreciated everyone's presentation and preparedness. I can't believe it. My wife and I, we sent a letter in also, but that way we just threw that together. And the other report that was prepared by staff was also, I read that this morning, don't tell the boss. It was very well prepared, so I thought that there's a lot of real input from my own personal experience. Prior to that, I had no experience with chickens. I'm around the house known as Mr. No. My kids, I'm no to everything, but I can't believe I said yes to chickens almost 3 years ago. Kids went to Klein Creek Farm, had a day at the farm with the school outing, and they says we have to have chickens. I consulted the ordinance, because I consider myself to be law-abiding. I looked at the ordinance at the time, and I even called the clerk because I couldn't understand the ordinance when it spoke of the 50-foot setback limit. I said, that can't be right, because therefore no one could have a chicken. So why would somebody write an ordinance that would prohibit chicken, would go to that extent? So I called the clerk for clarification. And at that time, she felt, or the person I spoke with felt that maybe it was just an old ordinance and it goes back to the farm days or something, because, of course, it didn't make sense. So that would be my comment about that. And I noticed that the ordinance was modified for the 20-foot setback. And not that I necessarily, directionally, that's better, and except I thought maybe the council might give some different type of consideration to the setback limit based, I don't want to have to repeat everything, the positive things that people have said about keeping of the chickens, and there really are, like I said, I was known as Mr. No around the house. These chickens are no problem at all. Everything that's been said about them are true in terms of their ease. If you keep the chickens down to a number, and by the way, forgive me for jumping around, I agree with the other gentleman's comment about the wording of the ordinance too, in terms of the numbers of chickens for 18 weeks and so forth. I think that if there would be no roosters permitted, which I would tend to agree with that assessment, then you can only have 4 adult chickens at any given time until you go out and purchase more, right? So unless you have a sustaining, like this production line going, which that's, again, I felt was reflective of the original code. It says must be roosters are there and chickens are coming and going, but if we're going to eliminate the roosters, then it would be beneficial just to clean up the language on the number of chickens, just for clarity on that point. And then in terms of setback rules, I felt that what would be reasonable would be something along the lines of the setback rules for other sheds, which, and I didn't have a chance to look into that too closely, but I think it's 6 feet or something off a fence line or something like that. Because in my view, changing the setback to 20 foot, then you put the pen somewhat in the middle of the yard. So it seems somewhat impractical then. Oh, great, I have chickens, but now they're in the middle of the yard. The purpose of to put them near the fence lines, often there's bushes and trees, which often offers a natural cover for the animals, because in the summertime in particular, it gets very hot. They go through a lot of water, so in the summertime, I do have one of these tractor type things that we put up near the bush to keep them out of the direct sunlight and away from the, in the event that there might be a hawk circling above. The animals, if you let them out of their cage, they'll naturally go to that location anyway. So I just thought we'd give that input in terms of consideration. I believe that's all I really wanted to say, because everybody else pretty much said it. Very good presentations. And I guess my strongest is what was brought up in terms of 4-H. Our kids, we brought them to the Sandwich County Fair, the chickens. They each got ribbons. It was a terrific experience. I'm thrilled about it. And the chickens we don't take them there anymore, but we still attend the Sandwich County Fair. It's been a change in our lifestyle just because of the chickens.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said you kept your chickens in your garage?
Yes, ma'am.
But you let the chickens out to
In the
forage?
tractor.
Yes, ma'am.
In a tractor?
Yeah, so, it's a hassle, but in the morning, we used to have the kids carry them out into the yard because we felt, as the others commented, that this is a natural thing for them to do, right? They want to get out and they want to scratch, and so you want the animals to be healthy just like any other pet. And so you give them a healthy environment. So we put them in the yard in the daytime, and they do their scratching and they do their thing. And then in the evening, we collect them and I put them in the garage. It was convenient for some of the comments that were brought up. I says, well, didn't want to be necessarily a nuisance to the neighbors. Maybe there's some critters that come around at night and create a ruckus. They might not actually get at the animal. So all those things considered, I said, I'll just put them in the garage. And it turned out to be a convenient solution overall, especially in the wintertime, because it's an attached garage. Temperature, even today when it's 10 degrees, I think it's about 32 degrees in the garage, and so only rarely does the water freeze and you put a little lamp on the water, but the animals themselves don't necessarily need, they're tough as footballs, you just leave them out there and they're just fine. That's I guess some of just the language in the ordinance, I think, is something that I expect should be a little bit more easier to understand.
Okay.
And that's the limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, it's really informal. I don't want you lining up like at school or whatever, but if you want to make your way down, that'd be great.
I'm the guy lurking behind the column back there.
Oh, that's right.
My name is Michael Molinowski. Can you hear me okay? Michael Molinowski, 5720 Nidau. One, I want to thank the council for considering this and it opened up for a conversation. I would encourage you to make the changes. My comments are brief. One thought is, for permitting and inspection, I would suggest that you don't do that. That from dogs, I don't believe you would be doing that. And it just seems like chickens are less impact on neighbors than dogs. And I understand the concern is you want to make changes or only make changes that are, good for the community in that. It could be something where in 2 years you look at it again and then see what the impact has been on the community. How many complaints have there been, any, or, see what it is, kind of burn it in. And, I don't think there's going to be that many evil people that are going to get chickens and mess with it. I think people that are sincere about this would be doing it, and they'd be very interested in making sure there is no impact on neighbors. They eat mosquitoes. To me, that's a huge, huge selling point. I have 2 girls that would love to have chickens, and I love the gentleman's comment about the only people that should have flocks is ministers. That was a great line, so I was working on one. So I would suggest, treat them like dogs, where we do that. We open it up for dogs, where chickens, I think, would be a lot less impact. So, just using that kind of as an analogy. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Will McCool, 4503 Sterling Road. Before I comment, I wanted to say I think it's a point of order that I think that Westmont actually gives you livestock when you move in. They don't restrict it. Whether you want it or not. Maybe not.
Wait a minute, I have to make sure this gentleman had a seat. Livestock. Jeez.
You say that's an economic development tool?
Maybe. The 2 things I wanted to mention, first of all, you say it's going to open up for 13,000 or so lots. The reality is I don't think many people are going to have them. You're looking at maybe 2 or 3 dozen people, probably. It's a big commitment, time and money-wise. So the only other thing that I wanted to bring up was in regards to the setback restrictions of 20 feet. If you look at some of the other towns like Batavia or Madison, Wisconsin, they indicate, for example, 30 feet or 25 feet from a residential structure on an adjacent lot. And I think that, well, 20 feet might be a good starting point. I think something else would probably need to be added to that. In my case, I have a kind of a thin and long lot, so if it was 20 feet, it'd be right in the middle of my backyard. The people since I'm on a corner lot, the people on Grand Street would see it. It'd be an eyesore. It'd also be closer to my neighbor's house to the south, who jammed the ranch in there, and they've got a door to the facing north as opposed to west, even though they're on Sterling. In our case, we have a 6-foot-high privacy fence, but it's not going to help because the village made us build a 4-foot-high non-privacy fence on the Grant Street side. So if you have a 6-foot-high privacy fence, and you're 30 or 40 feet, whatever it is, away from your neighbor's front door, I think that that's actually being a better neighbor than putting it smack dab in your backyard where everyone can see it. It's closer to the door, closer to their patio. I just think that there needs to be a little bit of flexibility in the setback, and maybe the people issuing the permit would be able to have the flexibility to do that, even take it on a case-by-case basis, because 20 feet could open it up for other issues that could be bad for the community, I'm afraid.
Okay.
And that's it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate your thoughts. Yes, sir.
My name is Glenn Ludwig, and I live at 5607 Durand and 1307 Turvey. Not simultaneously, but I have two houses. He's explained that to you.
Summer home.
Yeah, summer home. Let me begin by saying I'm a resident of Downers Grove for 63 years now, and I was delighted with the Forbes article on being one of the friendliest, I think it was the 8th friendliest city of our size or something like that in the States, and that was wonderful. When we moved here, and I was very young at the time when we moved here, we had chickens, and I want to say like 150 chickens, large chicken coop. We had ducks, we had geese. So as I look back over my life, some of my best friends have actually been chickens, so I have nothing against chickens at all. But what I'm worried about is their housing, not the chickens themselves. Now, I understand you have a permit that people will have to get, a building permit, but does that address taste? That's what my concern is.
Taste?
Taste
Aesthetics.
of the construction, aesthetics.
Okay, not the chickens.
Not-
I was not going there because I can't slaughter them.
I think it'd be foolish for any of us to say that we haven't had a neighbor in the course of the subdivisions we've lived in or the neighborhoods we lived in our lifetimes that haven't done well by their neighbors, let's phrase it that way. They haven't respected their rights. They haven't maintained their property. I know a lot of cities and villages have minimum maintenance requirements, and I appreciate that. I appreciate those types of laws. That makes my life better and everybody else's life better. But it just seems to me, unless you include something in this ordinance, if you change it, that would require a certain type of structure or a certain size of that structure, you certainly, I don't think, can dictate what architecture is going to be like. But there should be some requirements as to how this appears, because I would not want to be looking at some ramshackle little shed out in the back of my neighbor's property. And certainly the 1307 lot qualifies now under the current ordinance to have chicken coops. The other thing I want to mention to you is don't underestimate the problem with animals that come in, predators that come in. One of my neighbors and one of my fellow board members in Edinburgh Woods just lost his dog not too long ago to a coyote. And also the same animal took down, actually a pack of 3 of them took down a full-size deer in our neighborhood. So we do have an escalating problem with that. But again, for me, primarily, it's the appearance, or we need to tighten up or add some structure to it as to how these buildings are going to be put up and what they're ultimately going to look like. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, please, come on. Now, did you guys want to talk? Ladies first? All right, thank you. We're Cub fans. No, I'm just kidding.
I was getting yelled at for running.
Hi, my name is Janine Murphy. I live at 5643 Hillcrest, and I ran out of the house while doing dishes to be here tonight.
Well, thank you.
Well, my family doesn't thank you. They're still there. But, I've been having many conversations about chickens among my neighbors, my friends, even family that doesn't live here. They live in Indiana. And I felt that maybe I should come and observe and listen to other people's perspectives, but I also thought that might include my own. I live next to chickens, and frankly, I haven't known it for 6 years. My neighbor is 2 doors down from my house. She has a long lot. She is not in compliance. She is in the spirit of the law, but not the letter of the law. And just recently, when I learned she had chickens, I thought I'd stop by. I didn't call in advance and say, hey, I'm coming over tonight at 5. I didn't call and say, I'm coming on Wednesday. I said, hey, can I be there in 10 minutes? I grabbed my kids, took them both to her house. I walked in the backyard. She has a blueberry bush. She has a garden, and she has these beautiful, beautiful chickens. I'm used to Brookfield Zoo. That's where I take my kids. That's where we see the chickens, where we pet them. We pretend like we have a farm there. We don't. When I looked at her chickens, they were so well cared for and so beautiful, but I wasn't sure what to do. I mean, I didn't think they were going to come peck me or peck my son, but I figured I'd take my neighbor's lead. I let my kids inside. My neighbor said it would be okay. My son, who's 2.5, petted chicken. My daughter was looking at feathers. Yeah, they stepped in poop, but to be honest with you, I didn't even notice it until we got home. My son's Converse had chicken shit. I am so sorry.
Don't worry about it.
It's in the correct context.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, where's Doug? You got
He had chicken poop, and quite honestly, it came off a little bit better than my own dog's poop when he comes in. When I compare that coop, which was well-maintained, and the poop to the dog that I have and the poop we have in our yard, talk about runoff from our yard, oh my Lord, I feel sorry for my neighbors. Her situation was so clean and well-kept, I didn't even notice. She was feeding her chickens kale and zucchini. I had just fed my kids cookies and mac and cheese. So I come to you not as a policy expert, and I come to you not knowing what other communities are doing, but I know they're doing it well. I'm coming to you as a resident and a neighbor of someone who has chickens, and I want to say that it's never been an issue for us, not once. When I left her house, my kids were very excited. They wanted to raise chickens, of course, and my answer was no, because again, we can't even do the dishes. But at the same time, my son picked up an egg from the coop, brought it home. When he went to school and my daughter went to school, and it was quiet, I made an egg. It was the best egg I've ever had. So I am here advocating for my neighbor, who is very responsible in how she keeps her chickens. But then again, I know she wants to be in the letter of the law. I'm here also as an advocate for the changes that you will enact, and I hopefully do with goodwill and good conscience and good policy. Looking at the other issues in our community, stormwater and otherwise, this does not seem like the greatest issue. However, the conversation has been very loud, and that's why I'm here. So I hope that we're able to make good changes for our neighbors, and I appreciate that you listen, and I appreciate that you have good policy and good research behind you. Thanks.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
I'm well, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Brian Crosby, 5713 Hillcrest Road, Downers Grove. How's it going, Mr. Waldeck? Good to see you. I live next door to these evil doers over here at 5709. I'd like to take out of context that last lady because I wanted to say that these people aren't doing anything wrong, even though they're doing something illegal. It makes more sense at a more rebellious age, but what she said was that they're in the spirit of the law, even though they're not going directly by the law. I didn't quite take that perfectly out of context, but I just wanted to encourage you guys to change the setback on the lot line to 20 feet to encourage more people. I think the goal here for all of us is to encourage this wonderful experience of having these beautiful animals, nearby, and it doesn't cause any harm. There are no complaints of odor or noise documented in this, so I don't see the harm in bringing them any closer to the lines than they already are. And yeah, I guess that's all I really have to say. So, go Hawks also.
Home opener. Thank you. Do you want to speak too?
Yes.
Please.
My name's Greg Reiser, 4504 Stonewall. Relatively new to Downers Grove, and I oppose the chicken ordinance discussion, and I'm very new to just the discussion in general, so I'm just going to give you my reactions to it, which are not based on scientific research or fact. I do, however, greatly respect what's been brought here by the proponents of it. A lot of eye-opening information, and I certainly respect they have. My reactions to it are probably the same ones that are very obvious, which are noise, attraction of vermin, and potential for filth, as is mentioned by the person who went before the gentleman here. And these are just reactions, and for me, that just builds a perception that may translate into, inability for us to demand higher prices for our homes we want to sell them, may prevent people from wanting to move to a place like Downers Grove. It could just create a rap for the town that we potentially don't want. And I think that it's something that tailors to a niche group of individuals who I think are quite honestly more educated about, about food quality, quality of life, number of good testimonies about the family quality of this. But I think that there's a popular opinion of, a chicken wrap that could be negative and reflect poorly on Downers Grove. And that was just the only comment I want to make on it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Please, welcome.
My name's John Malade. I live at 5210 Grand. Unlike many of the folks who spoke here tonight, I've been a resident for 4 days.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. And I went to LT to boot. I'm from LaGrange Park originally, and I've been in Atlanta the last several years, where I raised urban chickens for 6 of them. I had 2 hens and a rooster, aptly named Janet, Chrissy, and Jack. And they were really fantastic birds. I talked to a lot of the neighbors about them. A lot of people I never knew because my rooster would be crowing and they'd stop by and they'd say, they all started off with, my grandparents had a farm. And I met dozens of people on my street because of the rooster itself. At the end of the day, the rooster wasn't much more loud than a squirrel. And in Atlanta, the squirrels are a little bit bigger and a little bit louder, but nonetheless. I'm not here to argue for roosters. Do away with them. I don't really care one way or the other. I think the setback is probably a bit much. In my experience, I had a 6-foot privacy fence with 0 setback for my chicken run and coop. No neighbors cared. There's no waste. I mean, it was really not invasive for anybody. Relative to the permit, I'm not sure why you would need a permit. Do we need permits to build dog houses here?
Depends.
Really? Okay.
Depends on the accessory structure.
In any case, I think the permit's probably unnecessary unless you're doing hard electrical work, which some people may. But if you're not installing electricity, I don't think you should need a permit. Nobody's going to be harmed with a tiny structure like this. I've also slaughtered hundreds of chickens with my hands. I mean, I was working at a CSA farm, and I was doing 75 birds a week. It's not a horrible process. I mean, it's much more, obviously healthy for the bird and less stressful for the bird. It's a great experience for myself, and there's nothing like fresh chicken meat. Now, slaughtering the birds here, again, I don't think slaughtering your birds is illegal, but rather doing it at your home. I mean, you can certainly take it to a butcher, and I don't think that's a problem. I would certainly want to slaughter my own birds for consumption. Relative to property values and purchasing, I mentioned I'm from LaGrange Park, and I really wanted to move back to LaGrange Park. LaGrange Park is nowhere near allowing chickens. That is one of the reasons I selected to buy a property in Downers Grove, is because while the ordinance is not perfect, and with any luck it'll be improved, it was a draw to this community, and I certainly value that. A lot of the things I do, both for a living as well as on my own, with our home and with my family, do respect a lot of the principles that folks spoke about. The connection to nature, the healthy living, and really just want to be a part of place. And chickens really help people do that, like gardening does. And again, I don't have any backing for this, but the whole predator issue, I mean, if we were really afraid of small animals attracting predators, then should we question size of dog or allowing your children out? I mean, yes, there are dogs lost. I haven't heard of any chickens being lost yet from coyotes per se. I'm sure that happens, and certainly wouldn't be reported here if it was happening. But they're not coming here for the chickens. You know, they're here for other reasons, territorial issues, as was mentioned in the presentation earlier. I don't think birds are really going to attract them. But thank you for your time, and really thank you for the entire community for providing their input and perspectives. I found it very warming to hear what folks were saying.
That's one of the leading difference between us and LaGrange Park, so you made the right choice by coming here. Even though you're 4 days old, you'll see that there's a lot of open discussion and a lot of community here, so we appreciate it. Thank you for coming out tonight. Did you want to speak? Did you want to speak too? Okay. Hello, how are you?
Hi, my name's Leanne Lally. I'm at 4117 Highland Avenue, and I, along with Dawn, was one of the people whose predicament kind of initiated this whole situation. You know, if I can, I wanted to speak to your concern about the 4 younger chickens as well as the 4 older ones, because I actually thought that was pretty ingenious that that was even stated in the code, because what the situation is when you have laying hens, at some point they start slowing down in their production. And right. And at that point, when you see, well, you pretty much know that, you know, after X amount of years, this is going to start happening. And that's when you may purchase some new chicks, and you raise them up. And yes, you do know kind of the difference between a hen that is laying an egg as opposed to a hen that's not, because there's an egg. And not only that, but there are certain physical characteristics that happen with a bird just as it comes into maturity and starts laying eggs. So people who own chickens can discern this difference. It's not like, are they 16 weeks or 18? There is a difference. You can see it, and then eggs come as a result of it. And generally, I mean, I kind of try and make sure that I have all different breeds, so I know exactly who's giving me eggs, so I know who's giving me eggs, basically. So I just wanted to address that, because I actually thought that that was pretty neat that was.
At what age does a chicken start laying eggs?
Well, it does vary from breed to breed. So generally, and it also, you know, winter also has a play on it. So generally, a person will get new chicks in the spring because you want to be able to put them outside at the appropriate time.
Just in general.
Okay, so in general, I usually would get mine pretty early in the spring. Generally, they don't start laying until after the first of the year, and I've had other breeds that have taken a month or so longer.
Approximately about 1 year is laying age.
No, approximately 6 to 8 months.
A little more than that, a lot of breeds, but.
But, I mean,
we won't
it
get
varies.
there, But it's not 18 weeks.
Like I said, it depends on light conditions.
You know, rotation, but what do you do with the old chickens? You eat them.
You know, some people will do that. Other people will decide to keep them as a pet. Another person might take them to, like, the extension and let somebody else take it from there. I mean, it just depends. There's a thing called responsible pet ownership, and that means having a plan for these things. So, but I also, Downers Grove has, for 26 years, had a profile ordinance. I believe that at the time when the existing codes were made, we probably had more larger lots. I know just since I've moved here, and I've been here for over 10 years, I've seen, you know, a house come down and 3 houses come out of the single lot that house was on. So it's possible that that was a more inclusive code at the time that it was created. But the fact is in the last 5 years, we have averaged 1 complaint a year, which basically makes us a success story in this experiment of chicken ownership. And a lot of towns, when they start to experiment with this sort of thing, might start with a stricter code, see how it goes, and then a year or 2 later revisit it and update. Well, it's been 26 years. I think we've done really well with it. We've had few problems, and I think that the whole entire town would benefit from basically bringing all the people who followed more of the spirit of the law rather than the letter of the law to now be in compliance. I think that would just be great. I did have a couple of thoughts about some of the proposals. As far as the number of fowl, I have a family of 8, and 4 chickens doesn't quite cut it for us. I would love to see that either 6 to possibly 8 chickens were considered, or maybe they would, like some suburbs will let you have a few extra chickens based on need and maybe give a special permit for it. I don't know. I would just like to see that it would be considered that someone who has a larger family or greater need maybe is able to get a few extra chickens.
Only so I don't have to go through all this. Doesn't a chicken lay a dozen eggs a week?
No.
4 chickens, 2 dozen a week.
That's what you
That's a grocery
said.
store.
4 chickens, all right.
Yeah. When I first hatched these chickens and discussed the possibility of keeping them with my kids, I had a 17-year-old at the time, and she said to me, I mean, she was just disgusted at the very idea of it, and couldn't understand why in God's green earth I'd want these chickens. And when I told her it was because I wanted their eggs, she said, "What? You're going to eat their eggs? That's gross!" All right, this is a girl who eats eggs, okay? I'm not talking about someone who's never eaten an egg. About a year ago, in the wintertime, when our production slowed down, I had to go out and buy store-bought eggs. Well, my next oldest was probably about 17 at the time, and she walks up while I'm scrambling up these eggs and looks in the pot and goes, "What on earth is that?" And I said, "Well, those are store-bought eggs." She said, "They are disgusting looking." Just to see where my family has moved along in this process. I mean, now she totally understands what a good, healthy egg looks like and isn't disgusted by the fact that it actually comes out of a hen. So it's really, it's been a great experience for us. Back to that, there's just a couple other things with the ordinances I just wanted to toss out there. I would like to see the enclosure treated more like a dog house or run. I just feel like when we're talking about animals that we kind of have to keep it a little bit fair and even. If my dog can approach my fence line, then my chickens, I don't see why my chickens should be able to approach my fence line. I have a fenced-in yard, and I would like to see a little more leeway on the free-ranging situation because they're contained and they don't get out, and I don't see why my neighbor's dog should be able to scream at my kids while they're playing outside and poop right along my fence line, but my chickens would have to be kept 20 feet away from all my fence lines. It's just not fair and equal, and the two aren't that different, you know?
Okay.
And I'm concerned with the whole idea of the aesthetic of a 20-foot setback. I mean, while that would certainly allow me to have chickens, and my husband is more than willing to rebuild our coop, but that would actually, in fact, bring that structure closer to both of my neighbors' residences. So I think, you know, I just think that we need to follow maybe a little more common sense than just a specific idea of footage, and also be kind of fair with that we don't look at one thing one way and one thing another way. You know, as Dawn had stated, the way the codes are written, the verbiage kind of assumes that people with other types of pets are going to be responsible, but the verbiage with chickens is assuming that people with chickens cannot possibly be responsible, therefore we have to have a list of laws. So I just like to see you guys to kind of take that into consideration and maybe not go out of your way to over-regulate something that's really kind of been working pretty fine. As a lot of people have pointed out, I think what this ordinance is going to do is it's going to more bring people in compliance, and if the number of chicken owners in the village even doubles, I'd be kind of surprised. But I've never had a person find out that I had chickens and not be absolutely delighted by the fact and want to pick my brain and know more. I mean, people are dying to learn more about these things, and they, you know, It's just, I've never gotten a negative reaction except from my oldest daughter.
Not to cut you off, only because I know there's a couple people that want.
Okay.
And you were a little bit beyond the 5 minutes.
Okay.
If you want to wrap up, or if you want to continue after the next, because I know that there's a couple people that have a comment.
Pretty much the gist of it, but I thank you so much for all the time and effort you put into this. I really appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Thompson. I live at 5354 Washington. I've been a member of Downers Grove since, I guess it's been about 15 years now. I am the neighbor of Ron, and Ron has taught me a lot of things about gardening and about many things. He approached me initially saying we'd, interested in doing a chicken coop, and I thought it was an intriguing and interesting idea. And then when he said, I've got the other two neighbors around us that are also interested in doing the chicken coop, I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing, because the ability for us to actually come together as a group to do this was just not something that, I was really even expecting. And we worked together on designing the coop. We worked together on building the coop. We all brought materials. We pooled all of our resources. And my only comment is that this can bring neighbors together. And I think we've heard from a number of neighbors that have been here. I'm pleased to hear that we have a lot of neighbors here of people who have chickens that are saying, hey, this is okay. So my only point is that it can bring people together, and I'd like to, in the spirit of that, to look at the laws with the intention and the idea that we could possibly allow neighbors to pool their resources, as opposed to having everybody individual and everybody, very specific and separate. That, and that kind of a law set would allow us to pool these things and allow the communities to come together a little bit more. So that was my only suggestion.
Well, thank you. Do you have a comment? Please.
My name is Paul Kotnick, been a resident of Downers Grove for decades and decades. And
We just need your address, sir.
Oh, sure, 5400 Park.
Thank you.
Sure. My major concern here has to do with the setback, regardless of what people who love pets or don't love pets, or love chickens or don't love chickens might have to say about it. The first thing that hits me is administrative possibilities for problems as to who will inspect to ensure compliance with the 24-hour clean-out cycles, and considering that we're talking about a potential 28-fold increase, even though the potential must be moderated by knowing that even though there's 509 lots that could qualify, very few people will do it. But nonetheless, there is a potential for a 28-fold increase in whatever is going on right now. The 24-hour clean-out cycle for dung removal and storage prior to transportation of same and or use of same in or out of compliance with village regulations on same might be, and also humane treatment of the chickens. Might the 28-fold increase in possible sites be more than can be handled by available village staff as currently trained? Will neighboring property owners' calls to report violations be handled a la triage-style evaluation of a decreasing likelihood of sanitary threat to first humans, then animals enclosed, and or nuisance noise, etc.? All of this stuff starts to look like, I remember a movie that had to do with the tiny country getting involved with other countries and getting countries fighting with each other and so forth. And it looks like I'm making a mountain out of a molehill, but nonetheless, these things would have to be handled in a business-like way. And even though the thought of somebody dressed up in a chicken inspector uniform with a pin that says chicken inspector and running around saying Bodiodo does crossed the mind for those of us who remember or have parents who remember the 20s. With the 28-fold increase possibility, from more than a 50% reduction in setback, possibly, I've went from absolutely to possibly, but probably forget property value stability for a while after the talk show media and newspaper columnists finish with Downers Grove. Jay Leno's Monday night headlines feature may not be able to resist this episode in Downers Grove's history, nor might house hunters as they scratch the village from their short lists. And just another thought passed my mind here. As a retired science teacher and trainer thereof at Indiana University, IIT, and teacher of science in a couple of districts in Illinois, I asked myself whether the setback decrease or increase the likelihood of children electing to do science projects involving live fowl. Obviously, the small numbers of creatures to be, and of course this would of course raise up concerns of people who are concerned about the welfare of animals and so forth in general. Nonetheless, the small numbers of creatures to be permitted would totally eliminate even the dream of controlled experimentation, but the potential would still be there for an increase of consideration and/or "Ma, please, Dad, please, I really want to do it, projects, along with the inevitable deterioration of same as children lose interest and the 24-hour poop-scoop cycle goes wanting and perhaps eliminates relationship in a negative way between neighbors and so forth. But just thought I'd bring those things to your attention.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay, do I have anyone else that wants to speak? Come on down, please. You're next. So we got 2 over here. How about this side? Anyone? 3, 4. Okay, great. 5. Yeah, we know. I'm saving a spot for you. Welcome. How are you?
Hello. My name's Krista Calvino. I'm at 605 Gear Street. And a couple years ago, I had gone for a whole afternoon. We went through Oak Park in Chicago to see backyard chickens. Every single one of those coops, every single one of those homes, yes, they were prepared for guests, yes, right? But talk about the display of the chicken coop, how it was made. I have not seen one chicken coop that the owner didn't put a lot of work into. That's their home too. They want it to look nice, you know, as well as the pet issue. So I think that's, it just, the other thing too is they had the coops, there was no ordinance against the lot line. It could go right to the edge or right to their house or whatever. And what they could fit on a little lot was amazing. All the chicken owners, it was very clean. They're very proud of their pets. Their pets, all of them viewed them as pets. And I think it would be much more aesthetic and feasible and workable, livable to let them put the chicken coops wherever they want to on their property, where they can manage them best. And Will McCool, as he mentioned, sometimes it's more aesthetic to have it pocketed right here next to your back door or whatever, and it actually, your neighbor will see it less if you could put it next to the lot line. I'd also like to make a comment regarding chickens are another pet, and I don't understand why chicken owners would be treated differently than dog owners. That's come up many times this evening. Dogs can be more of a nuisance, I think, than chickens can, and dirtier and smellier. Many of us have lived next to a neighbor who's had a dog, and you sit there in the afternoon on your patio, and a summer breeze comes by, and you know you have dogs next door. I have not experienced in the multiple chicken coops that I've been around, I have not experienced any unfavorable smells like that either. So my biggest move, besides the comment of to treat the equality of pet issues, a chicken owner shouldn't be treated different than a dog owner. And also a request to nil the 20-foot ordinance from the lot line. Maybe if you're concerned, if you want to have a chicken coop and you have to have it okayed, then just say, is this site better? Would you like this better? Give options for that maybe individual owner on that property, where their door is, where the fences are, where their neighbors are. Maybe that might help too, but I really don't see much difference between a chicken or a dog. They're pets. They have personalities. I wish we could bring a chicken here so you could see.
They told me no, I tried.
They have personalities. I do not have chickens though, but thank you so much for
Well, we appreciate your time.
taking views on this.
Thank you. Yes? Are you, okay? Hi, how are you?
Fine, hello. I'm Patricia Turner. I live at 7517 Rower Drive in Downers Grove, and I've lived in Downers Grove for 39 years.
We can't hear you. We need you to speak a little bit into the louder than a mic.
Okay, my name is Patricia Turner, and I live at 7517 Rower Drive in Downers Grove. Lived here for 39 years. Quite frankly, I didn't take this whole thing seriously because I thought it was a joke at first when I saw it publicized about chickens, because we do not live in a rural area. I knew that when I moved here 39 years ago. Had I wanted livestock, I would have moved quite farther down 55. We already have sufficient animal problems to begin with. They recently redid all the streets in my area, and so we had ripped up driveways, ripped up streets, and we would have to park our cars 2 or 3 blocks over. And if you came home late at night, you'd park your car. The sidewalks were also ripped up, so we would have to get a flashlight and walk through the yards. That were the only place that there was an abundance of raccoons, skunks, opossums. I had no idea there was that kind of wildlife that we were dealing with already. And adding chickens to the mix is not going to help. And again, it's the whole thing. I strongly agree with the gentleman about the sanitation issues, and also who is going to monitor this. Will it be the code enforcement officers? Because this sounds like we're opening a whole other can of worms, which we're going to have to pour a lot of taxpayer money in to hire additional code enforcement officers to police this. And we already see people that are saying, well, the restrictions are already on, we want them eased up. Then we're going to come back again and we want them eased up again. Again, we do not live in a rural area. It has not been rural. It's fine for most people, and if we want to be ecologically conscious, we'd all be vegetarians, because we all know that the greatest pollution comes from animals and animal byproducts. That's about all I have to say.
Well, we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Name is Mike Harrison, 110 7th Street. I'm in favor of this easing up on the restrictions. I think it's great. I think it's the wave of the future, as I think we've seen the effects of being separated from our food supply, corporate farming. I think this gives an element, just like vegetable garden in the backyard. Let's just raise a few eggs. I'm not thrilled about the 20-foot setback. I think a smaller setback or even no setback, depending on property by property basis. I think in my case, if I got chickens, my neighbors would know much less if I had it back in the corner of my yard, back in the back corner up close to my 6-foot fence, versus out in the middle of the yard. My neighbors would see it more if it were there, if I followed that setback. Building permit-wise, I'm not quite sure why we need to do that at this point. I'm in favor of doing a kind of more of a hands-off and address the problems as they come up. I'm not sure if we need to put a lot of regulations in place to address problems that may or may not exist. So let's give it a try and then tweak it, add more regulations as needed from my perspective versus having permits and all the regulations up front. So that's what I'd be in favor of. So,
great.
Thanks for taking this on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on down. Do you guys want to speak? Looks like we have 3 left, 3, 4. Come on, 5.
Rebuttal.
And a rebuttal.
Hello. I'm
Hi,
Laura.
how are you?
Good. I'm Laura Siebert. I live at 418 Grant Street, and I'm in favor of chicken ownership in Downers Grove. I'd like to see the ordinance change to be more inclusive for more Downers Grove residents. We wanted to raise our own flock, and when I looked on the website at the ordinance, we couldn't have them due to the current setbacks. And even with the new setback, we still couldn't have it. The way our house is situated on the lot with the garage in the backyard too, it makes our yard rather small. So I would like to see the coop setback treated more like it is for sheds and other structures already. I also believe that the chicken ownership should be treated like owning a dog. You know, there aren't all these regulations on all these people who have multiple dogs in their yards, and I won't be walking my chickens and having them do their business in other people's yards, as I have to deal with every day when I'm out in my garden on my hands and knees, you know, working in where this dog just did his business. I also wasn't happy to hear that the chickens had to be contained all the time in some sort of run or their coop. It's not the way they are supposed to be living. They're supposed to be out in the wild, in the yards, eating bugs and digging in the grass, and that's one of the benefits of owning a chicken, is they take care of all of that for you. As I said, they fertilize the lawns for us and your garden. So I would like to see, as long as the owner is home, the chickens could be in the backyard, a fenced yard, but in the yard like dog owners, if their dogs are out and they're home, and then, you know, put them back in their coop at dusk to avoid the dangers of predators. We also went on the Windy City coop tour this past autumn, and we were just amazed at how they kept the chickens in the city of Chicago on these tiny narrow lots, and the coops were all really cute. I mean, they made them fit in with their yards, and we went to see how they did this because we have such a small yard, and they were beautiful, and they treat them like their pets, and it was a really very beneficial visit for us. We have 4 children, and we really believe in feeding them well. We get food from farmers, and we just try to eat organically. We grow a lot of our own vegetables, and we would like the opportunity to have a few eggs as well. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Hello. I'm Elena Falco. I live at 5114 Main Street in Downers Grove. I've lived in Downers Grove for 40 years. I also have sold residential real estate in this town for 13 years. I've been through hundreds of homes in this town. Never once have I shown a property or reviewed a property with a chicken coop in the backyard. I don't think when showing bigger issues, when showing properties, everyone's concerned about if my neighbor has a chicken coop, what will happen to my property value? Honestly, I think Downers Grove is a salt of the earth community. I think people move here from towns like Oak Park or from the city. We win out over other towns because we are a salt of the earth community. We think outside of the box. We're very conservative, but you see a lot of people doing things like planting gardens and having chicken coops. I didn't see a chicken coop my entire life up until about 2 years ago. And it wasn't, I was kind of shocked. I didn't even realize the village allowed them on certain properties. In the last year, I actually have a personal friend who owns a coop. She's here tonight. I've never seen anyone care for 4 chickens better than most people care for their children. Her coop is actually inside of her home because she does not want to violate anybody's ordinance. It's in her basement. It's quite a unique operation that she's running. The children in the neighborhood love it. They get fresh eggs every day. And I think a lot of people are afraid that, we're going to have these rundown chicken coops in people's backyards, and now I'm not going to be able to sell my house because my neighbor has a chicken coop. Or it's going to, if anything, I think if it's done correctly, a coop in someone's backyard, if it's taken care of and maintained, and they follow a village ordinance, can actually be a selling feature. Like, that's a really cool neighbor. I'd rather see that than a barking dog. Or 5 dogs. I mean, you see how some people care for their properties and their backyards. And I don't think this is going to put us into a rural livestock type environment at all. So, and I think if it's done right, I think the entire community will benefit from it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
My name's Tom Sievert. I live at 418 Grant. My wife and I would like to get chickens. You just heard from my wife a couple minutes ago. And I'll just take a minute of your time. You've heard a lot of things, pros and cons. I think the pros probably way outweigh the cons, at least from everything that I've seen, everything I've heard. And I think what you'll find is, from the people you've heard from tonight, and even just other people that are interested in keeping backyard chickens, the people that want to do that are going to be responsible types of individuals that believe in a lot of other responsible, earth-friendly, whatever, that type of mentality that is, I think, a really positive way to live your life, right? And in having chickens, they're going to follow that same type of lifestyle. Basically taking care of the chickens, taking care to make sure that they're in a clean environment, fed well, kept clean. Probably no different than someone that has a dog and tries to keep good care of a dog. Picks up after the dog, make sure the dog's clean. So really, I think at the end of the day, some of the concerns that you hear could be concerns with any animal, right? But I think what you would see is that the folks that want chickens are going to basically be models of chicken owners. In regards to the alternative for the ordinance, it is an improvement from the existing ordinance, but I think it would still be quite prohibitive. I know my wife mentioned that in our case, between the 20-foot setback and the 10-foot building, from a distance from another building, that we wouldn't even be able to have a coop in our yard, and it's not like we're on a typical lot. It's just the way the building is structured. But again, you've heard a lot of interesting information tonight, and I think it would be well worth it to have the community consider changing the ordinance to allow more people to have chickens. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to speak here tonight. I am Virginia Nodelman, and my address is 4116 Lindley Street. My property backs up to a current coop, and the coop setback that you're proposing would force this owner to have her coop directly in the middle of her yard, which would be a detriment to not only her kids who have, you know, playground things in the backyard, trampoline, things like that. It would make it where she couldn't have these things for her children, and my children who come over and play with her children. Her coop and her chickens have been immaculate. I've not had my son come home covered in chicken poop like some people have, you know, led to believe. And they're her pets. She cares for them so much. I feel that the number 4 is a little on the low side as far as adult laying chickens. I think that, you know, a couple more would be, you know, a little better for them. And as far as noise levels and things like that go, if you didn't know they were there, you'd never have a clue. Once in a great while, you might hear a little bit of a cluck, but that's it. There's much more noise created from the dogs in the area, and I just don't think that forcing people to not be able to have them is in our best interest in general. I think that being able to have fresh eggs and the experience even for the children of learning how that life cycle goes, I think it's very good for us. And that's how I feel.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please come on. Phil, did you still want to talk? No. No. Ladies first. Welcome.
I'm a little nervous. I don't
No, don't be
speak.
nervous.
Relax. Oh, okay. And I did not prepare anything, but I just wanted to speak. Okay, so my address is, well, my name is Molly, and my address is 4917 Parkway Drive.
And all we need, Molly, is your last name.
Oh, that would be Cawthorn.
Okay.
Okay. I am just, I don't really know why I'm here. I'm just here to kind of say that I am pro allowing the chickens in Downers Grove. I know you hear a lot of sides, and I respect both sides very much, because if you don't have a clean coop, it's gross, and I get that. I understand both sides, because chicken coops can get dirty if you don't take care of them. And hopefully, as an animal owner, you will take care of a chicken as you would your dog or whatnot. But what I wanted to say is, chickens, if you haven't met a chicken, okay, let's just say you haven't met a chicken, okay?
A live bird.
Okay, there is something, I know people go, wow, a chicken, you know, wow, you know? You gotta meet a chicken to know exactly how wonderful they are, okay? And you think they're just birds running around, okay, but no, they don't. They have personalities, and they're humorous, and they're caring, and they're loving, and to be honest with you, they are very therapeutic animals. And I think having these animals around is good for the soul, whether you're an adult suffering from a disease that is incurable, or you're a young child who is stressed out from the day. Yes, it's great, they bring home eggs, you know, the eggs are fabulous, okay? I don't know, I mean, I think I've had one in the past. But anyways, I'm just saying, these chickens, you can hold them and love on them, and they will sleep in your arms, and they're like dogs. So, I just wanted to say, I understand everyone's points of view, but before you think chickens are gross and dirty and everything, I think if you meet respectable chicken owners, you will find that they are well cared for. They have dusting devices where your chickens don't have bugs, or, you know, they're clean if you take care of them, just as a dog is clean if you take care of it. So, with that said, I just wanted to say thank you, and I just think it's wonderful that everyone's keeping an open mind about this. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it, thank you. Anyone over here that wants to speak? On this side? How about over here? Come on down if you do. Come on down, Phil, if you want to. Anyone else after Phil? I know. We can. Okay.
I missed my chance to ask.
No, hey, this is different.
I know, but I didn't know what
Hello.
Hello. Philip Schnell, 1240 39th Street, Downers Grove. I have a history with chickens. I have a PhD in poultry science. Now, maybe I should just tell you a couple of my experiences with chickens. My first experience was there was a number of places that were very concerned about odor pollution. And it was one of the largest projects that Cordell ever took on. Cost the state about $50,000 just for us to do it, and then $500,000 to execute it. And what we actually had to do is get rid of the ammonia that was being displaced by the chickens. Now, it wasn't 4 chickens. It was 100,000 chickens. But if you're living in a concentrated area like we are in Downers Grove, the same thing's going to happen. So there's going to have to be some sort of odor abatement. The next thing is the disposal of waste. I've seen people that have had what they do is basically put down straw or something over the top of the old stuff to make it look easy. Well, there's 2 major things that occur with chicken waste. One is phosphorus, and the other was nitrogen. Phosphorus is kind of taken up very quickly into the soil to a certain level. Nitrogen goes off. It will run off, and anytime you're up higher than the guy next to you and there's runoff into the next person, that's where it goes. So if you're going into retention ponds, any kind of areas like that, that's where you're going to find the high nitrogen level. And I'm sure you've contended with high nitrogen levels. What it does is put blooms on areas, causes various problems with that. The other thing that probably, they were asking about, can you tell the difference between males and females?
No,
And you can't.
No, I'm talking about the age.
He's talking about the age of birds.
I know, but when you get the eggs, the fertilized eggs, and get them, usually what happens is it's 50-50. And what happens is you have to destroy the males. Males are no good. They're not good for anything, really.
Someone say that so again.
Well, in chickens particularly, and they have to be destroyed, they have to be put off somewhere. And that was one of the reasons that we had all of our poultry science areas in a separate area from the whole campus, because the things we had to do with chickens, nobody else wanted to have around the campus. You had to destroy it, you had to dispose of the bodies, you had to get rid of everything. So it was a mess. But that's the way poultry science is. Chickens, by the way, historically, the ones that are bred right now are bred for food. They weren't meant to be out onto the yard to be pecking around. You know, those are the days of 50 years ago. You're going to have to get new chickens to figure out how to do that. The Rhode Island Reds and all of the white chickens that we saw over in your yard, those are not chickens that, you know, are bred for around here. You have to get something that can be used somewhere else. But, you know, once you get rid of the air pollution, the water pollution, the groundwater pollution, I think chickens are great. They've given me a wonderful life. They've allowed me to retire early, so I think chickens are great for Downers Grove if you can figure those out and you don't have to pay for them. So that's really all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, I think you'll be our last speaker.
For the rebuttal.
Yeah, we got the rebuttal.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say.
2 minutes.
2 minutes, the mayor says 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Ron Wackler at 919 Stratford Lane, Downers Grove, Illinois. I first of all want to thank the council members here for taking the time to listen to the residents. It's been a long, exhausting evening so far. I think you have a meeting planned after this, don't you? No? This is it?
Oh, this is
I
it.
thought I saw an agenda. Well, thank goodness. But thank you very much. I did have one question. Is there any change in the lot width of these properties because of new ordinance proposed, the new proposed ordinance? Not in the lot width, 100 feet,
No.
no change in that?
No.
Also, I think one of the previous speakers referred to a setback from 20 feet to 50 feet. I thought it was 50 to 20. Did I misunderstand it?
Correct.
50 to 20.
Yeah, I think somebody said it the other way around, so I wanted to clarify that. Okay, thank you very much. Bear with me while I look at my chicken scratching notes that I have here. That's my joke for the night, so you'll have the first of many. The first of many. There are some issues regarding chicken coops, I think, and they need to be mentioned. Some of it's redundant. I may be repeating what some others said, but that's okay because I feel like I'm reinforcing what they said. Biggest issue, one of the big issues, reduced setback from 50 feet to 20 feet. Don't believe it's necessary. And the qualifying lots, this blew me away when I read it, from 509 at 20 feet setback to 13,883. Now, somebody says, well, everybody isn't going to have a chicken coop, but it sure opens up an avenue of increased chicken coops. Would the chicken coops attract predators? A recent article in the December 17th, I beg your pardon, January 17th local Trib in the Tribune points out that DuPage County has noticed an increase in coyotes all over. And there are hundreds of stories of people where the coyotes are attacking their own dogs and cats in the backyard, and I tend to believe that another animal present, a chicken, might increase that number. Also, we can be talking about, as somebody mentioned earlier, raccoons, possums, foxes, and hate to mention the word skunk, but skunks occasionally. Residents with dogs or cats outside, if they keep them outside at all, would need to be cautious and alert because of these situations. Now, enforcement. I see that as a big issue. To be real honest with you, I haven't had a chance to talk to our enforcement department, but I'm sure they're stretched pretty thin with what they have to do. So how would odor be controlled and enforced? What happens when chicken coop owners are away, weekends or longer vacation time? The big question is, would the village need to add code enforcement staff, thus increasing their workload, or add another person, increasing the costs? So I think enforcement always is a big question, and I think we're stretched pretty thin in that area. Now, somebody mentioned property values earlier. Let me give you a hypothetical situation. What about a property owner wanting to sell their home? Would a prospective buyer be more inclined to buy that home not adjacent to a chicken coop versus one adjacent to a chicken coop? So we're trying to sell a home, and you might find somebody, a lot of people like chicken coops, but maybe this person doesn't. So you're in competition with other people selling their homes. So very briefly, and in conclusion, I would recommend to the village council that the current ordinance not be changed, because in my opinion, looking at the few complaints that we've had already, it has worked fine. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we get into the rebuttal and then get into council conversation, if any, is there anyone else that has any comments that they would like to make before our committee tonight? All right, so we got 2 rebuttals now. Anyone else want a rebuttal? I guess we'll take it from there. We'll let you go.
Me first?
Yes?
Okay. Thank you.
And again, it'd be the same 5 minutes.
I'll try and keep it under that.
I probably thought you would, but I...
Okay, first
Set the
off,
groundwork.
during the proceedings, a point of parliamentary order, I guess you might call it, or something. I was thinking of going gathering signatures for the opposed people, all right? Now, I see a woman gave you 250 signatures she gathered, and you accepted them. I think as a point of order, you did not want to have a referendum where you left it up to the people to vote on the thing. So I think it's improper for you to accept 250 signatures, which are more or less voting on the issue, when you would not have the people vote on a referendum. So that's my first point.
Just for,
All right.
put your mind at ease, they've been received.
Well, I think they should be received in the circular file. You know.
With all due respect, we're receiving your comments,
Yes.
and those
All right.
comments are entitled to
Okay.
the same treatment as everyone else's comments.
Okay, well-
With all respect.
I'm just saying, I didn't gather them because I didn't think it would be appropriate. All right, first to get this middle of the yard business. This is kind of getting to be a domino thing. The old law was 50 feet and 4 chickens and 4 of the other chickens and stuff. And now you're thinking of changing it, and you're thinking of 20 feet. And already this is not acceptable. It's already getting down to no setback. It should be right up to the neighbor's yard, because otherwise, if the people that want chickens and love chickens and can't control themselves with having a chicken, it can't be kind of in the middle of your yard, so it imposes on their yard. So now it's getting to be the point, it should be way over to the side, so it's right next to their neighbor, okay? So that's fine. Also with the chickens and stuff, if you get certain breeds of chickens, they fly somewhat, not real good. If you have a 6-foot fence, they can fly over. So I mean, if a person gets into Leghorn or a few other breeds, they want to be prepared to do a little wing clipping. Suggestion, clip 1 wing, not 2. If you clip 2, they start getting pretty good and get better. 1 wing, they keep flopping over, and then they never get over the fence again. So just a farmer point for you, all right? Okay, as far as inspecting, if you go to any of the websites, which I forwarded to the council and stuff, backyardchicken.com, countryliving.com and such, you'll see all kinds of coops, anything from a mansion to one that you could build out of old pallet wood. So as far as this no inspection, I think it should be inspected, because otherwise some people are going to want to save some bucks, and they'll take some old scrap lumber and tack it together, and it's going to look like some of the chicken coops that you see out in the very rural areas. And evidently, 25 years ago, Downers Grove was getting more urban and less rural, and that's evidently why they put in the chicken coop. Now we're kind of going backwards, all right? And so I hope you use some common sense if you do change this, so that we're not going from 50 down to 20, which is over half the restriction, and then get down to thinking, well, 6 foot, and then get down to 3 foot off the property. I mean, if the people want chickens and love them, let it be in the middle of the yard. That's fine, you know, or have it right attached to the back of their house, where, you know, they can love them even more. So, let's see. And sustainability. I have no real skin in this game, okay? Other than the fact I'm afraid once this starts, it's going to snowball. It's a big fad in the U.S. now, very trendy, and it's going to keep going and going. And at some point in time, I'm going to sell my house, and I could get less because I'm going to have chicken farmers all around me, okay? I go to the store and buy chicken and eggs, and that's fine, and I don't care if they're, from this farm or that farm, or there's 5 stores in town, you can buy organic eggs and organic chicken. So anyhow, that's my rant for tonight, okay? Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
I'm done.
All right.
Fine.
Thank you. Yeah.
Question about that. Does the current,
Yeah, why don't you come up? I don't really want to start a debate amongst residents, so I'm kind of leery about that, but I guess I'll go ahead with it.
There's no debate, I just did
Okay.
clarification.
Mike Harrison again, 110 7th Street. Does the current regulations or the alternatives, does it allow a chicken coop up against a house or up against a garage?
No.
He had just said.
No,
okay,
he's
I
saying
just-
that
He said he was worried about it starting a slippery slope where it would end up that way.
I see. Okay. Okay, that's all.
Okay. All right, thank you. Come on.
Now, you can only rebut what the last person said.
No.
Otherwise, it's not rebuttal.
It's not really in a rebuttal. This is more observation points. Once again, I'm kind of coming, well, I wouldn't say necessarily, but kind of look at both sides, posing questions.
Name and address.
Fee Chang, once again, 5507 Aubrey Terrace. My wife, she came from a farming-based background. She grew up with cows and chickens, kind of going to the pet corollary there. My father-in-law learned you should never make pets out of your food because they had a pet named Sink, a pet cow. One day they had a really great steak on the table, and they're like, "This is great.
Webb, right?
We're missing a cow. Well, which one is it? Sink." You should have seen how fast it took for those forks to hit the plates, and for 5 girls to start crying, and how many pounds of meat were wasted in the freezer. So, as an early lesson, my wife found that making pets out of your food sources is not a great idea. And she also did say, chickens peck, and they peck the living daylights out of your feet when you're a kid. So, not necessarily saying all chickens peck, but the ones she encountered growing up, they weren't the friendliest. I do foresee that this is a lot of model citizens that are kind of presenting chicken coops. Now, whether or not this, as these expansions occur and the number of houses that are allowed to have chicken coops, will that continue? Will they continue to be model citizens for maintaining chicken coops? I don't know. And that's kind of a question I have in my mind. It's kind of like, if you're trying to introduce a new dog ordinance in a place that has no dogs allowed, I'm sure you're going to have model dog owners. Is that going to be the case as things go on? Going on to the dogs, is there an impact that are going to be affected to dog owners by chicken coops being placed next door? Will there be dogs be considered a nuisance for barking at the chickens where they never previously barked? And if that's the case, what happens to the dog? So when 3 neighbors come together and form a communal chicken coop, what happens when one neighbor leaves? Is that whole place torn down, or do they have to enter a new agreement? That's another issue I kind of had in the back of my head. I heard someone saying that they formed together almost a commune-style chicken coop. Now I understand the building a sustainable food source. We have a family of 10. Unfortunately, we lost one recently. So we can appreciate having lots of renewable food sources, and the idea of having 4 just doesn't seem to cut it, from my perspective as just maintaining a food source. Also, my kids are more favored towards ducks, so do ducks count too?
No. Neither do turkeys.
There goes that idea. Southeast Asia, I know that there's a lot of problems with animal-borne diseases, especially in more populated areas, suburban style, more urban style settings. So that's a concern I have just from an Asian perspective of seeing what's going on in that area. Now, granted, if we maintain clean areas, I think that's a great idea to maintain cleanliness and prevent that. And I do agree with the comment that was mentioned earlier. Kids do eventually lose interest in animals. I can attest many reasons in my family to say, yeah, buying an animal and saying kids are going to be responsible for it, not great. Not a great idea. But I can't say I'm absolutely saying I'm for or against this, just a lot of concerns, and I'm not sure quite yet where I'm going to stand on this, considering we kind of have the idea of, yeah, it sounds like a great idea, but we didn't move into a farm. That's kind of echoing what Patricia said. We moved here because of the commute, and if we wanted a farm, we would have moved out further west. So, but we love Downers Grove, and that's why we're here.
Thank you
very much. We appreciate it. Hi, how are you?
Hi, fine. How are you all?
Very good, thank you.
Okay. My name is Maria Ibarra Lorense. Maria Ibarra, I-B-A-R-R-A, Lorense, L-O-R-E-N-C-E.
Thank you.
Maria, first
And
name.
we just need your
My
address.
address is 5712 Hillcrest Road, Downers Grove. And I'm here because I would really like to be able to have, chickens. Our lot, even my neighbor's lot, that they have 2 lots, it's 110 feet. So I was laughing because I said, well, imagine that I put the chicken coop in your yard and I take care of it. So it will be, 10 feet, that will be quite a chicken run. You know what I mean? Because it's 100 deep, but it's 110 wide. So I could have a chicken coop 10 feet. So it really doesn't make sense. We are a family that like to do self-sustainable, and I'm a school teacher, so we always hatch chicks because it's just fun and it's really neat, and I think it needs to be regulated. We don't want chicken farms or things like that. But, I had my next door neighbors, that big boss that you had in the village of pot. They used to live next door to me, the pot growers. And they had these 2 horrible dogs. And they were so dangerous. They will growl at the children. I called the village 100 million times because the dogs will just go out and were without a leash, and then they will jump at the kids walking to school because we live half block from Hillcrest. And I mean, really. And we cannot have 2 chickens? Really? And I heard people also saying that, because one of my friends, she had the chicken coop. And some people say, well, it's because she has some training with animals because she went to college and then she worked at the Brookfield Zoo, but we're talking about chickens. You don't need a master's in ethology to raise chickens. I think we need to be responsible owners, the same way that you need to be responsible with with your cat or your dog. Some other neighbors were saying, well, what about all the sicknesses that they can have? I say, I understand, I am concerned, but, my cat has been sick, and then I just took it to the vet, and guess what? I have a cat with toxoplasmosis. Yay! Goes every year to the vet. We really take care of our cat. I have a child. I don't want that in my house, but we had a cat with toxoplasmosis. So some things you cannot control. What I'm saying is that I hear a lot of fear from friends and neighbors about the chickens, but I don't see it that way. And if it's regulated and we have the ability to do that, it would be wonderful also for the community, because with my friend that had the chickens, they were just the best. Oh, I'm over 3 minutes. No. Sorry.
You're right at 4.
Okay, yeah. So I just remembered that it's 3 minutes. It's funny to say thumbs up, lady. Okay. So I won't keep you. I'm done. Sorry. Thank you for your time, I didn't mean to be over the 3 minutes. I forgot
No, it's
why
5
I had
minutes.
my...
You still have 2 minutes.
Just 5 minutes.
You can have another 5 if you want it. We're all good. Just no rebuttals on rebuttals. That's all. That's all.
It's all home, you know, it's late.
Didn't get the book yet, so.
Well, we appreciate it.
Thank you
for coming.
It's just a great, you know, I heard people from Glen Ellen, oh, that would be great, you know, Downers Grove is changing. And I also heard people, well, if you want to have chickens, why don't you move to unincorporated Downers Grove? Because Downers Grove can be awesome, and we want this to be diverse, enriches the community. You know, with my friend that had the chickens, it was so great. Everybody wanted to see the chickens. Everybody wanted to touch the chickens. And we had like the funniest comments. Look at the legs, they never, you know, they never get fat. You know, all these comments from the kids that you would think they would know, but they don't. They don't, because not all the teachers grow, you know, hatch chickens in their classrooms. So really, it's for many, many reasons. Okay.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wish to make comments?
Just one rebuttal, real quick.
Okay.
See what you started?
I'm done.
With rebuttal.
Yeah, but there's 99 other people now.
Stick a fork in the chicken.
Next thing, people are gonna be asking for sir replies.
Ron Nowicki, 907 Summit Street. There was a comment made about pollution, air pollution with ammonia, and water pollution with phosphorus and nitrogen. Well, if you exceed the carrying capacity of any piece of land, then you will get pollution. You concentrate people or animals, you concentrate energy and wastes as a result of that. 4 or 6, even 10 chickens in a home landscape is not going to be a problem. 100,000 chickens in a confined animal feeding operation where they have to have huge fans to keep the animals from dying from their own ammonia that's generated from the manure. And this is the stuff that we eat every day from the supermarket. That's a whole different story. You can't compare the two. That's all I got to say.
Well, thank you.
Here's the sir reply.
Okay. All right, this is the last one. Otherwise, I'll be on the patch. Can't run a meeting. No sliding. Too late.
That last answer was totally ridiculous. There is no way that if you gather enough nitrogen in hay from 4 or 5 chickens, that it's not going to run off into a pond. That's all I have to say. And if I'd like to see his source, because I've written articles on it.
Okay. Right, this is it.
I'm sorry, but we were talking about runoff into the ponds. There is so much pesticide usage and everything that is not just poisoning our water system from runoff, it's making everybody ill. The kids are allergic to grass, for goodness sakes. There's a lot more problems with that kind of stuff versus worried about organic chicken manure. That's a natural thing. We're not talking the scale of hundreds of thousands of chickens. 4 chickens, maybe 6. You know, most of people put that right into their garden. It gets assimilated in. I think we've got bigger issues. Sorry, Krista Calvino, Gear Street.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. Yeah, you know what, let's take a 5-minute break. We've been here since 6 o'clock. It's now 8:30. Well, there's still, I think this is what everybody really wants to hear is our discussion and where we're going to go. So 5 minutes, and then we'll be right back here.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank everyone for your input. It means a lot. It's well received. What I'd like to do is turn the this next part of the meeting over to the council. I'm going to start with the mayor. and then move on for comments, and then we will wrap up. Mayor?
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to just echo Commissioner Durkin's comments to everyone who came here tonight and expressed their views on this subject, and also to all those who have expressed their views on this subject to us over the last many weeks. We have received probably more comments on this topic than just about any one that we discussed in these chambers in the entirety of 2012, if you add in all the comments from the various sources. So it has been very educational, certainly learned a lot about this topic, a lot more than I ever thought I would ever know. And the one thing that surprised me is the unexpected level of passionate interest in this subject from a variety of different perspectives. I mean, we've heard the entire spectrum tonight, everything from don't allow any chickens in Downers Grove to you shouldn't regulate them all, abolish the ordinance, let everyone do whatever they want, and everything in between. So clearly there's a lot of different views on this and a lot of different thoughts, but one thing that's not been lacking is passion on this topic, that's for sure. So I want to thank everyone for their comments and their thoughts. I do think that it was appropriate to address this topic, and I know we've gotten a fair amount of ribbing and joking about why are you even talking about this? It's kind of a silly topic. Well, clearly the last number of weeks and the topics and the comments here tonight have indicated that it's been anything but that. Obviously, people feel very passionately about this, and so I think it was appropriate to at least look into whether or not this was something that might merit some kind of an adjustment. Candidly, I had no opinion on it one way or the other, but it seemed like something that there were enough people that were interested in at least discussing it. And I was aware of the sustainable food movement, which had previously, long before this year, I think at least over a year or so ago, there had been some questions about whether we could do more to support that within our community, since we are a green community and we do a lot of things here in the village to try to be mindful of the planet on which we live. So appropriate topic of discussion. Also mindful that there are a lot of strongly held views on this topic in terms of whether it presents a danger, an increased threat of disease, whether it will attract more predators, whether there's an impact on property value. I've been at this long enough to know that if I took a poll right now in this room about what people thought impacted property value, I don't think any of you would agree. It's in the eye of the beholder in most instances in my view. So that also cuts many different ways. Enforcement is always a question, because whenever we're talking about committing village staff to anything, including this meeting tonight, it is not a small undertaking, because it's taking up time that could be spending on something else. The other thing that I was particularly impacted by was a comment that was made that this is not a yes or a no issue, and I think that's really important, and it's guiding at least my initial thoughts on this, having now heard a great deal about it. It's not a yes or no issue. A lot of the comments I've heard tonight are, again, either we shouldn't allow chickens at all because it's one step removed from global thermonuclear warfare, to this is a wonderful thing and everybody ought to have 2 chickens in their backyard, and I can't imagine somebody doesn't. The reality is that we already have an ordinance that's been working for 25 years that already allows the chickens to be kept under certain circumstances in certain parcels within this community. So we're not here talking about whether we should have them or not have them. We're simply exploring whether or not there might be some modification of the existing ordinance that would make sense. The ordinance, I think another commentator, I basically took notes of what people said, and it kind of fell together, and kind of where my head's at right now is that we do have an ordinance that's been working for over 25 years. Apparently been working well, has not been a problem. Haven't had that many issues, not that many violations, and I don't know if that's because of the current limitations or not. Would we have more problems if it was more widespread? I don't know, but it seems to have been working pretty well. And it's not uncommon, and there are a lot of other areas where we have zoning and other limitations about how, where, when, and to what degree people can do things on their property, fences, pools, drive-throughs, all kinds of things we have. And no, not everyone can have those things in every single parcel in Downers Grove. So there's nothing wrong or inherently overbearing about saying that these are appropriate uses, but only in certain areas and certain under certain circumstances. That's That applies to countless categories. So the fact that not everyone can do it doesn't necessarily motivate me to want to change the ordinance. The reality is that we have 509 parcels, single-family residential parcels in Downers Grove right now that could do it right now without any request. In fact, the proposed ordinance is more restrictive in some respects than what we currently have. And I'll get back to that in a second. I don't know, but my guess is there's maybe 20 people out of a village of 48,000 that have chickens. If we were to expand the ordinance as proposed, I don't know, would it double to 40? I don't know. But I'm also mindful of, we don't want to manage an entire community for what is a relatively small issue. And a relatively small number of people who would do it. I think a lot of people are in support of those who would want to do it. But whether they would do it themselves, I think I've also heard that maybe not so much. Probably the biggest concern I have, and I think what grabs most people when they hear about this is, I don't know if we have the maps, the two graphics. Allison, I'm sorry, I should have given you more heads up on this.
The site maps?
The maps of the parcels that would be applicable. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Yeah, that's the current ordinance that's been in place for, thank you, it's been in place for over 25 years. Shows where, well, we can go back to the green one for a second. Timing, it's all a timing and effect. This is what I think probably gets most people concerned is you look at that map, you think, okay, there's places in Downers Grove where you can have chickens. And then we talk about an ordinance that would basically change it to the next slide. Sorry. And I think that's what kind of gets people. Like, well, wait a minute. It's pretty much the entire village in terms of residential properties can now do this. And I think that gets some people a little nervous because they may think they know if this is going to happen under the current system, but they're not so sure what's going to happen or when it's going to happen or where it's going to happen under the new one. And I also don't know if necessarily painting with such a broad brush the entire village to address what appears to be a relatively limited issue in terms of the ability to do this in certain places is necessarily a wise way to go about this. We don't normally go about things that way, changing the entire village, sort of like using a hand grenade to kill a mosquito. It's kind of smacks of overkill. So I'm having a little bit of a reaction to that. And as I mentioned, this proposal is both, on the one hand, more permissive because it results in that red map, but it's also more restrictive. And that's the other thing to keep in mind is there are things right now that folks who'd like to keep chickens on those 509 parcels can do that under the proposed ordinance they couldn't, or they would have to be mindful of even more limitations than that currently exist. Some of those might make sense anyway. I don't know. The educational information that we received tonight and previously, as well as the proposal that's up here on the board, suggests that maybe our current ordinance is too permissive. So I get the sense that we have a situation here that kind of screams out for compromise. And it strikes me that maybe the ordinance we have that's been operating for over 25 years, keeping most people happy without much concerns, may be that compromise already. So I'm not necessarily moved right now to change the ordinance necessarily, having now heard everything from we shouldn't allow them at all to we should allow everybody to have them. We seem to have something that's worked really well that's kind of in the middle. And I remember another issue about 10 years ago where we ended up with a compromise that made everyone equally unhappy. And when you have something that makes everyone equally unhappy, that's usually a sign of a pretty good compromise. Now, I don't know if at some point in time there are individual issues that can be addressed in a different way. I don't know. I'm not prepared to go into that. Whether it can be regulated in other ways and treated like a special use or have a license, I don't know. But my concern is that I don't know if this proposal right now is the right way to go about this. And I'm kind of on the notion that what we've been doing has been working pretty well. So that's just kind of where I'm at. But one thing that I'm sure that Commissioner Durkin has already pointed out, this is a committee meeting, so this is a workshop. We're not making any decisions tonight. We're just simply, as we have been, taking in comments, discussing the issue, listening, thinking. So I'm just sort of sharing what's on my mind right now.
We appreciate it, thank you. Bob?
Thanks, Sean.
Just make sure you speak in the microphone.
Yeah,
All the
I'm
requests I have for you.
Not everyone
notorious for not being able to
Taped
speak
down
up.
tonight, too.
What's that?
They're taped down tonight, too.
I
You
can't even
touch
move
them.
closer. Much of what you just said, Martin, is exactly where my head is on the subject. And the maps are no longer up, but that.
Get there now.
One of the things that we have to do as we legislate, as we govern, is as changes are made, we have to find ways to bring the community along with us. And it strikes me that, I was thinking back to some of the conversations that this body had 2 years ago about garbage contracts. And, you know, we had some proposals initially, and we moved around and eventually ended up with some changes that were sort of less dramatic. We have to listen, and that's exactly what we're doing tonight, to folks that have an interest in changing something, anything, but be cognizant of, respectful of those that don't have an interest in the subject but maintain their expectations. You know, one of the dangers I think that any body like this has is we make changes with so little information so often from residents. I mean, we got, as Martin said, as much information on any subject, certainly the time that I've been up here, both actual information and input from residents on any of the subjects that I've been sitting here for, on this subject tonight, and still we're talking about 50 to 100 people across the village. And there's, I don't know, 14,000 residential parcels, something like that. And so it seems to me, I was interested in talking about this because on the surface of it, if there's a permitted activity that we've managed to do for a long time without being offensive, without having a lot of troubles, that most people can't, and there's a bunch of people that want to, that's an entirely reasonable thing to talk about. But the question that's kind of before us is the changes that were proposed, how do they look? And do we think that that's something we have an interest in going forward on? And I think it's way too much for the other, you know, the other 49,500 people that are barely paying attention tonight. They still have expectations. Martin alluded to, I don't know, I'm going to butcher your words, but other elements that we control from a zoning standpoint, other regulations we put on people, and I was thinking through some of that. For instance, you know, I can't put a shed on the front corner of my lot. Does it necessarily hurt the neighbor? Not necessarily. Would a change be drastic and terrible for everybody? No. But I don't think that we should change the potential and the assumed expectations for pretty much everybody in town in order to try and accommodate a fairly small number of desired actions. It's not to comment on whether those are reasonable requests, because I think they are. I think that there's some evidence tonight that folks could do some of this activity well, but we still have to kind of guard the expectations of all the folks who aren't participants in the process. And so with that in mind, that this kind of a change seems to me way too much and affects way too many people as a potential resolution to this question or dilemma in front of us about how could some more people be involved in backyard flocks and backyard chickens. If we change anything, we have to be trying to figure out how to bring the community along. And I think that changing the rules without them hardly knowing and caring, and therefore their expectations all thrown out the window, is not a good way to bring them along. I think we made adjustments, like I said, in the garbage thing that brought more people along than not. There were certainly some folks who were upset about potential changes there, and frankly, we evolved before we decided on what the contract would look like. And that's kind of where I'm at with this. I don't think this set of proposals in front of us is appropriate. It's just way too far for all the people that are not participating in the process. I'll let everybody else chime in. do have a sketch that I wanted to draw that I'm going to wait for a few minutes, but I may bug you all and draw a little sketch on a board to try and illustrate this further. If anybody else wants to jump in.
Well, I know that when this was first brought up, I know Commissioner Waldeck, myself, and Schnell already voiced our support for the current. So unless each of you have a comment to make, that'd be great, but I'm going to go to us last.
Okay.
I'd rather go to Jeff and Becky, so I'm going to go to Becky first because it's always ladies first, so Becky.
Thank you. Let me know if you can't hear me. I'll speak up.
Go ahead if you want to do your sketch.
Well, I think most of you know where I stand on this issue. I do think that there are ways to possibly compromise, going from the current ordinance to maybe a between the road here from the staff proposal. We've all heard everyone speaking tonight. I'd like to thank everyone for being so polite and cordial. You know, that can be difficult when it's such an emotional issue, so I appreciate that. And we've heard people that are pro-chicken and people that are anti-chicken. And I really think that there are ways that maybe we can find some middle ground, that we can do revisions that can still allow people to raise chickens, more people to raise chickens. While I do understand your concern of going from 500 to 13,000, that's a big leap, and I totally understand that. But there could be ways to do it that are respectful, and that was some of the points in the permitting and the building code, so that a chicken coop isn't offensive to a neighbor, and the licensing, so that if people are misbehaving as chicken owners, that they're not permitted to do that. So I think those are some of the components. And the slaughter rule, I don't know if Mr. Enerson left, but I mean, I think some of that was that some people might find offensive, or if their children witnessed a chicken being slaughtered. So a lot of these things were an attempt to find a middle ground. So I was sure hoping that we would get there tonight, but I'm not sure if that's going to happen. I just wanted to make sure I covered everything I wanted to cover. What about, making some changes and then revisiting it in a year to see what the impact of our changes are? Looking back and seeing, well, we had 4 people sign up to get a chicken permit or license, and it wasn't the big impact. I think I heard some mention from others about limiting the amount of licenses or permits that are given out, so that this 13,000 number that is scary for people because they, the fear of the unknown, that everybody in town is going to get chickens. If we put a limit on it, then there's a little bit of control, and we can adjust that limit as the time goes forward. What about changing the setback to 50 feet from an occupied residence? So then it's still a distance away, and you're not combating some of the issues that some people are concerned with. I know some of my suggestions are probably going on deaf ears, but I felt like it was my chance to speak, and I wanted to share them.
I don't think they're deaf ears. I don't know if it's a distance issue. I hear what you're saying, and I'm not closing my mind on this. Don't get me wrong. It's the approach that I have a problem with, because I think that because we want to put something on one corner in the village, we rezone the entire village so that parcel can be built. That's the process I have a problem with. I think that so it's not even so much the what I'm hearing is it's the whole issue of whether it was 50 feet or 200 feet or 5,000 feet. Some people were never going to want to have it. You're never going to convince them that otherwise. And so right now we kind of have this happy medium where it is allowed, and candidly, for those that are, if you want to use the word anti-chicken, if they happen to be living next to one of those 509 lots, they don't have any say. Coop goes up, boom, too bad. Nothing they can do about it. I'm thinking of a process more like Commissioner Barnett mentioned, where you bring people along. And I don't think it's got anything to do with setbacks or distances. I think it's got, I don't know what it is. So maybe we look at it later when I'm smarter, I don't know. But I don't think monkeying around with setbacks is going to be the way to do it, or the way to do it in a way where I think you really can bring the whole community along behind it. Because I'm not I'm not rejecting the possibility there isn't some way that you could actually get everyone to support this and we wouldn't have two sides.
I would disagree. I think that the people that are not interested in their neighbors having chickens, anything I say to them, they aren't going to change their mind. And I would say the same for the people that are interested in having chickens. That's why I'm suggesting a middle ground, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah, but I think it's worth a try, though. I mean, I don't want to talk out of line, so.
I agree, it's worth a try. Yeah.
We'll come back to it if you forgot something.
Okay.
That I promise. Jeff?
Thank you, Sean. Somebody mentioned the word rural, and Dave Fieldman is probably laughing behind me because when we were talking about our comprehensive plan, I actually asked for that word to be removed from the plan because I know Downers Grove is not a rural community. And somebody else talked about meeting chickens. I went out and I did meet some chickens, and the ones I met were clean and happy and seemed to be very well cared for. I think there is a certain amount of small issues for some are big for others. And this issue for a family of 6 or 10 or however many there are is a big issue because it's not about necessarily sustainability, but it's the financial aspect of owning and raising their own chickens. It's the aspect of the educational component that's there. And I think that, yes, we do have to look at the whole village for sure. It's very important, but that goes along with some of the other commentary that we heard tonight about the setbacks and what are the other processes that we could maybe use. Is it a special use component like it is when we put in a drive-through or a car dealership that's got a speaker or lights that can't be shining into the neighbor's property, or the speaker can only be on until 10 o'clock at night? Those are the kind of issues that we talk about all the time in a special use form that puts a rule on a neighborhood. And yes, it may not be a corner neighborhood that there's rezoned for the whole village, but it's a specific area that has a process. It's a neighborhood comment, it's a sign that goes up from the village. I don't know if that's the answer or not, but I think that there could be a better answer because we have heard, there's 30-plus commentators here tonight. That's more than we had for our budget meeting, that's more than we had for our stormwater utility meetings, and it's a lot more than we had for our water rate study meetings that affected everybody village-wide, and it certainly is a lot more from when we abate and or vote on our tax levy. So I appreciate all of the interest that's been in here, and actually Commissioner Waldak's comments a couple weeks ago about trying to add a referendum for this question kind of come to light tonight because we did have a lot of people here. I still don't support the referendum bill, but I think that we saw tonight that there are people that are interested in this. There are a lot smarter people here than I am about chickens. I think we had a couple of, PhDs in poultry science, at least one, and maybe somebody else with a master's and other animal sciences. So I'm not going to go into the science issues of it. I do think that there are a lot of opportunities for us. I would be in support of the proposal that was put out by staff with the change in setbacks to give it a try. I think it's something that we as a council have heard from a lot of residents, and we don't always hear from residents in the amount that we've heard on this issue. I do think that the folks that are against chickens are going to be against chickens, and they may have issues of memories of chicken farms that are completely different from backyard chickens. One of the things that I looked at when I was looking at this issue was the accessory structure rules for an actual structure in a backyard. Whether it's a shed or a dog house or a dog run, whatever it may be, we already have some rules in place for that, where the accessory structure has to be a certain size away from the property lines. I think that using those types of ideas and some of the other comments we heard about, setbacks from adjacent human-occupied structures. There's a lot of options that are out there that I think would have been incorporated into the staff proposal had we maybe given more time or even given a little bit more input from the council, but we didn't really know what we were getting into until we got to this point that we're at tonight. Actually, a few weeks ago when the staff report came out. So while I would have liked to have seen some action come out of this committee meeting to go to the village council for first reading and possible vote, I do think it is a yes or no question where we could have said yes or no to the possible amendments before us. It doesn't look like it's shaping up that way tonight, but I don't think this issue is going to go away. I do feel for the folks that had to modify their lives to change their chickens. I think that's something that we should be very cognizant of as we go through this conversation and continue it, because we need to come up with, in my opinion, a solution that isn't just 509. We do have 14 or 18,000, whatever it is. What's the number, 18,000 parcels? Business and residential?
Yeah, business and residential.
So there are a lot of people that may want to have this. And maybe, I think I counted about a half a dozen that were here tonight that either already have or have had or would like to, and they discussed that with us. That is a very small number in the grand scheme of things. But it's just like 6 people saying they want a stop sign at their corner, and you only need 5 to get a petition to be a traffic calming participant. It's just like Downers Grove North asking for a bigger fence or a smaller fence at their parking lot. It's just like a lot of small individual things happening around our village. And in this case, it would be an all village encompassing issue, but we address small items all the time at the council level. This is a bigger change than a stop sign, over on Blodgett or something like that. But I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate all the commentary from my colleagues. I think that we have all learned a lot. I never thought I would have learned so much. And I appreciate the folks that let me come into their backyards to see their coops and see their setups. It's very important that we try to understand and learn what we're talking about before we make a decision. So I'm hopeful to continue this conversation. I know that it's not going to go away, and I plan to work a little bit with my colleagues to try and find other opportunities to come up with solutions to be more inclusive for folks who want to have this opportunity in their yards and on their private property. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Just a couple of comments. One, I really want to congratulate everyone that was here this evening, from people who welcomed us into their homes to see their coops, to the people who made the comments this evening. I have been part of some very contentious issues since I've been on the council. This has probably been the most respectful group of diverse opinions that I've ever seen. And you need to be congratulated on that. Nobody, booed somebody who was on a different side of your issue. There were a couple of laughs exchanged, but basically everybody sat there, were respectful of listening to what other people had to say. That's great. That's the way debate and education should take place in the community, and it did here tonight. And that means a tremendous amount to me, because I was a little concerned because of some other issues that I sat through as a council member where that didn't happen. And as I said, you should all be congratulated for being respectful of each other. That says a tremendous amount about this community. I do agree with some of the comments that my colleagues have made, in that going from the 500 number to the 13,000 number, I think scared a lot of people. It was too much, too soon, too quickly. If you look at some of the communities that have recently enacted chicken ordinances, they really patterned them on the old Downers Grove ordinance. Larger lots, more rural, if you want to call it that, but more space between property owners, so that if indeed there was an issue or a concern about the ruralness of raising chickens, that there was a little bit more space. And if you look at many of the ordinances that have been enacted, they're bigger lots. And from what I understand, a lot of them were patterned on Downers Grove. From the very beginning, I thought the ordinance that we had worked. It has not produced a lot of concerns by neighbors, and that was one of the reasons why I thought that we should just continue with it. We've heard from a lot of people this evening who are, if you want to call it, pro-chicken. I have received telephone calls, emails, you name it, from people who are not so pro-chicken. And I've learned from both sides. There are as many people who are concerned about the issue out there who spoke this evening. There were a lot of comments that were made about the fact that they were afraid to come to this meeting to really express the opposite opinion because they didn't know how it would be received. I think they would have been surprised, probably, at how it would have been received. But be that as it may, they voiced their concerns to me, and my guess is that they voiced them to some of my other colleagues, too. The bottom line is it's an issue about what our community should embrace. I know I was out at our home and they said, well, where are you going with this and how do you feel and what are your issues? And my biggest issue whenever I try to decide something that's contentious is is this really what all the residents in Downers Grove want to embrace? Is this really what makes Downers Grove the place we bought into, the place we want to live, and the place we want to raise our family? And I get the sense that as a community, I think that's what Bob and the mayor were saying, that as a community, we're not quite there yet, and that as a community, we really cannot embrace the idea of raising chickens on every lot in our community. We may get there someday. I don't think we're there yet. And from my perspective, that's one of the reasons why I think that we need to continue with the ordinance that we have. And then if somewhere in the future we need to move on, then we do that. But right now, I don't think that's what our community value is.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
Bill? Gee, last. Thanks, Sean. I want to thank you for the way you're handling it.
I'm last.
Oh. No, I want to thank you for the way you handled the meeting. I want to thank all the folks that did come out tonight, pros and cons, because public comment, as long as it can be sometimes, is actually my favorite part of the meeting. And you are now being addressed by a lame duck. So I had to get one out there between now and May, I'm sorry. But when this was first mentioned, I think it was mentioned by somebody else up here, you know, it seemed like it was going to be a joke. And as a member of the council, I take my council responsibilities seriously. I don't think anybody has ever accused me of, well, I take that back. There's one person that probably did accuse me of not doing my homework. But I am known for doing my homework. And because of the homework that I did, it was part of the reason why I asked for that referendum. Because I learned a lot, and I thought maybe I could adjust my opinions if the community really, really, really wanted to do this. And that was one way to gauge it, to gauge the public opinion. But, you know, that failed, that's fine. So I did all this homework, and I did my reading, and I got all the emails and everything. I didn't respond to everybody. I will eventually. They say that if you read Moby Dick carefully, that at the end of the book you will be able to capture and process and create whale oil. There's so much detail in there, and I think from everything that I've read, I could probably go out and do a responsible chicken coop like some folks here, I'm sure have. But the problem is, you know, you can't unfortunately, you can't legislate for the best. You know, for the perfect dog owner, for the perfect chicken owner, for the perfect snake owner. You have to take everything into consideration. And I did a lot of reading. I know you all know the issues. Noise, I'm not really that worried about. And smell, yeah, I've seen articles both, you know, where they smell, they don't smell. There's the disease issues. There's the property values. So I came tonight loaded with about 25 questions for staff based on their report and some other things I thought of. I also came up with 25 different comments, and I won't make them all because you all want to go home too. And I could share share the questions with staff and the comments. But to boil it all down, I did bring some articles. There's article, you know, we heard Saturday from a realtor that insisted that it would be a detriment, or could be a detriment to property owners, and so is not terribly supported. We heard from a realtor tonight that is in support. I got a letter, an email here from a branch manager of a realtor that suggests and describes a little bit why it would hurt property values. I brought an article from Indiana University that did a study of property values on various types of livestock and such. I got articles on diseases, you know, the smell, and I read staff's report, and one of the things that grabbed me is even the pro-chicken articles say they smell. But this is how you keep the smell down. But then in Chesapeake, Virginia, they suggest, well, you know, you take the manure and that, you water it down, you keep it damp. And then it's healthier. The salmonella doesn't, the germs don't spread, the avian flu and some other concerns. Keep it damp and it'll be fine. Well, now you have a choice, because if you keep it damp, it smells. And I won't, I mean, there's just I brought all kinds of articles, so property values, smell, diseases, and then the other thing that grabs me is code enforcement. We have this ordinance that has existed for all these years, what was it, 87? And there's relatively few complaints, so therefore we should just open it up. But the fact of the matter is that the people who have violated those ordinances have been violating them not for 6 months or a year, they've been going on for years. And we have all these issues of code enforcement that just aren't being addressed. People talk about dogs, you know, the jogger that gets attacked by unleashed dogs, you know, dogs barking and all that kind of stuff. These are things code enforcement should do. We aren't doing those. And now we're going to expand code enforcement possibilities, you know, the responsibilities. I just think it's way too much. I think we have an ordinance that works. You can't do anything you want in any piece of property you want, as the mayor suggested. Responsible chicken owners would have, if they did their homework, would have seen right off the bat, either it's against the ordinance, or I don't care if it's against the ordinance, I'll do it as long as I get away with it. Whatever the... So there's people who are responsible, people who are irresponsible. We got dog problems. We got coyote problems. I don't know what we do with coyotes, and it's getting worse. And you don't solve the problem by putting out potentially more food. And as I tell people, you know, fine, you know, you get a chicken coop, and you got the chickens running around, and oh, they aren't going to create more coyotes. Well, coyotes are territorial. You put out more food, you can house, or you can manage to attract more coyotes. And we already got that problem. And if you protect your coop, they're in your neighbor's yard. So, you know, this is really a neighbor issue. It affects their property values, it could affect their health, it could affect all these things. And it's the neighbors. I mean, it's kind of like if you want your family to go skydiving and, you know, to push your 12-year-old out of a plane and skydive, that's fine, but don't land on my roof. And it's the same thing. Don't endanger my property values, don't endanger my health. We got drainage problems. We got enough problems without expanding it this way. So, long story short, I will share my articles with staff as I intended to do, my questions and so forth. I'll cover that with them. That's pretty much a bottom line of what I was getting to. So I would not go for any change in this particular ordinance. Okay. And even if that means leaving the rooster thing, because evidently roosters aren't a problem in the 502 potential areas that we do have.
Okay.
Thanks, son.
You're welcome.
Thank you all. Can you draw a little picture? Can you draw a little picture over there?
Yeah, you can draw. I can talk. No, you draw. I'll talk. It's all right. You know, I did state earlier on that I was not interested in reviewing the ordinance, that I was sufficient with the existing ordinance of 25-plus years. But what has changed, though, is that I am interested, and I think that there is a solution out there, but I don't think it's the solution that we saw here. And I don't even know what Bob's drawing to say that's what he's doing, but what scared the living light out of me was when we took the two maps and we went from the 500 to 13,000, and that really scared me. It was too much, too grand, too soon, too fast. And everyone that has communicated with us, either here through presentation or through the email or a voicemail or however they communicate with us, at least the ones to me, I haven't heard anyone complaining about a neighbor with the chicken. So to me, that's rather interesting, because I would think that there'd be more people saying, my neighbors got them, they have all this, that, you've said, Bill, and others have said, which I'm sure there's some truth to. But it's not that. If you look at the demographics of the chicken owner, and they are pets and how people talk about them, I mean, I think the issues with dogs are great, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed, but I really think it's a social. I mean, we as a society have accepted and adapted to that behavior, and I think that is something that needs to be addressed. But is that the role of what we do here? I don't know. I mean, we have limited staff, we have limited resources, and I know we do a great job with what we have and the services we provide. But to go to what has been proposed or what could have been proposed, or the 13,000, I think was just way too much, and that really scared me. I remember right after we had the meeting, I sent an email to the mayor saying, hey, you know what, help me out here. I'm not for chickens, but help me how I can understand, and maybe I can come around and look at it and ideas that he had presented. But, at the end of the day, with what we have before us, I don't think is the right solution. But I'm not shutting the door saying that we can't have something. One of the thoughts I had, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know if they're legal or not, I just look at it common sense wise. Maybe you have a certain number of licenses, maybe you have 50 licenses, and the first 50 people can have chickens. But where I come in and say, okay, that's fine, but I want you to communicate with your neighbors and have them aware of what you're doing and move forward. That was just some of the thought I have. So, Bob, I'll turn it over to you. I don't know where you're going.
I apologize for everybody that's still watching this, trying to figure out what I'm doing up here. One of these committee meetings, we don't have them often, but they are sort of intended to be, your kitchen table. I think a couple of the folks said that, welcome to our table. And so this is, my colleagues know I tend to use backs of envelopes and napkins and things to try and say something, and so they'll probably bear with me better than you guys will. But what I was trying to say at the beginning about bringing the community along and trying to reference back for those of us that were part of it, the garbage discussion. This is unscientific, but the point is that on almost any subject matter, we've found, or at least I've found, that you've got people on both ends of the spectrum that are pretty engaged, pretty active, pretty invested in any subject. And then you've got a chunk of folks in the middle who are way less so. We see that in the number of responses we get to surveys. We see it in how many people come to meetings. And so part of our job is kind of almost safeguarding this, if you will. So what I don't think the stuff before us tonight does is sufficiently brings this group along. I want to bring the community with us. One of the reasons I was opposed to the idea of a referendum is we can make a rule change with this, right? 1%. All these folks love something. They get 49% and a couple others, and all of a sudden we're making a rule change, and all these guys have had their world turned upside down. I hate that idea. What we did with the garbage idea was, to use this as an example, we picked up about half of this, and we dragged it over to about here, and we got an ordinance that reflected something that brought most of the community along. And that's got to be our goal. And what I'm afraid of when I see this 509 to 13,000 kind of a thing, and I see sort of this totally open-ended thing, is that would certainly satisfy some group of folks to who this issue is important, but it'd be leaving this huge chunk of people by the wayside that I think we're charged with keeping an eye out for, safeguarding against. That doesn't mean there's no solution. When Martin said, what you said, it's a yes, yes, no, no, there's no yes or no for the night. I don't know that there isn't a solution. I don't buy that. I think there probably is. I don't think this one's it tonight, and it's for this kind of a reason. We have to be thinking of creating ordinances and making changes to our community that drag most of the community along, that doesn't put them into a position of thinking, you know what, I'm so mad because people don't care about me, people ignore me. There's always some degree of that, but I gotta believe that we can work on solutions on any of these subjects that come to us. I think that we can do better than what's here tonight, and I don't have any idea what that answer is. I really don't. But I don't want to do something that I think just sort of changes the expectations for 90% of the community without really making sure they're up for it. So I don't know if that helps or hinders any. You guys understanding where my viewpoint was, but that's what I was trying to say before.
Go ahead, Mayor.
Can I make a couple of observations?
Yeah, sure.
Two observations for the audience, and then a couple things for my colleagues. For the audience perspective, especially those who may view this as a disappointment, keep in mind that there are arguments that were made quite firmly. You heard some of them from Commissioner Wallach tonight that we shouldn't allow this at all in Downers Grove. So that's not being changed. There's still 509 parcels that can do this right now, go out, do it tonight. No problem. The other thing you heard, the other observation is that I think I've heard several people say that this is not being foreclosed forever. And the comment I want to make for my colleagues is just something to think about. Bob pointed out one problem with this. Another problem with this approach is it kind of treats this issue like a property issue, and it's not really a property issue. We don't need to characterize 14,000 parcels in our community in order to address this issue. It's more of a personal, individual neighborhood issue. It's not 14,000 parcels. Because candidly, we're going to treat it like a property issue, then one could make the flip side argument, and I've got to make the devil's advocate argument, so I will. Right now, you got 509 people who are thinking, man, my parcel is worth more than everybody else's because mine, I can actually market my property when I sell it as one that will support raising chickens. And if it's as valuable and as desirable as I've heard it is tonight, then the minute we open that up to 14,000 parcels, we've just diminished the value of those 509 parcels. Now you're sitting there thinking, well, that's ridiculous. How could you come up with this as a screwy example? Well, you're right. It's because you're thinking of it like property. I think that there's maybe a solution here, but it's more of surgical, individual, person, situation, neighborhood issue, as Bob and others have mentioned, than it is painting or effectively rezoning 14,000 parcels in order to address something that's only a challenge for a handful. I just think that's bad. That's a bad approach. But I'm not saying there isn't some approach. So something to think about.
Go ahead, Becky.
So we have the GIS data. Can you look at, and it may be very difficult to assess this, but can you look at, properties that would be eligible to do it if it was 50 feet from an occupied residence? Or would that be like a huge, I don't want to create a burden, but if the hurdle is the amount of properties that could do it, and that's the main contentious issue, if there was a way to determine what the different options and how that would affect and how many properties would be able to do it.
Welcome, Dave.
Could you give your address,
801 Burlington. First of all, the way we measured it using our current GIS system and the current and proposed or alternative regulations was based on measurements of how wide properties are and making some assumptions that your coop area would have to be about 10 feet wide to make it even reasonable. The answer to your question is it would be much more labor intensive because we do not have currently in the database measurements between and among structures. And it would have to be a pretty sophisticated analysis. That being said, we have some pretty sophisticated staff, especially in the GIS department. So if at some point the council directed us to take a crack at that, we would take it as a challenge and probably get some pretty good information back to you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
As far as turning this into we're going from 502 to 13,000 type issue, gee, if it was 5,000, it would seem more palatable. But I know where I stand right now with the issues of drainage and health and all the other things that have been brought up in the material that I've read. I don't want to be, and there's a lot of people who don't want to be the chosen one that gets to have chickens next door. Some people like it, some fine, but there's a lot of people out there who just plain don't. And if you're going to issue licenses or compromise on numbers and that kind of thing, we didn't solve the health issues, the code enforcement issues, and all the other serious issues. If you can solve those issues, then 13,000 isn't a problem. I mean, you could do it. If you could take care of the drainage, if you could take care of the property values, if you could take care of the health, if you could take care of code enforcement. But we aren't going to, just by changing the numbers and my gosh, heaven forbid, somebody should have a piece of property and suddenly find out that they were the unlucky ones that lost the lottery because their neighbor got a chicken coop. And if that's the way they feel, why should they feel, why should they be made to feel that way? Especially with all these other types of issues. We need to address these issues and not just, look at it as a lottery, as a number. Quite frankly, I was shocked at 13,000. As a matter of fact, when the first meeting we had in January, whatever date that was the one that Commissioner Rankin missed. I had the understanding from staff. It was the 8th, okay. Well, it didn't,
The pictures have the date.
But I remember staff saying that under the current recommendations, the people who were in violation would still be in violation. And now that's changed. So I don't know how we got from one to the other, what piece of paper, what documentation there was that expanded it so much to where suddenly what was illegal now becomes illegal.
I don't think that's the case.
Vice versa.
No, I think they just came into compliance.
Came into compliance.
Yeah, is how I understand it.
Correct. They removed their chickens from their property.
See, that's where there's such gray area here. I mean, you're adamantly on one end of the fence, and others are on the other side of the fence, and, it's, that's where the unknown is, but, we do assign, I don't know where I guess my point is, if there is interest, and we all can count to 4 to move it forward to the next step, what priority does this fall under, and where does it fall under in the 2013 agenda? I know that we're going to start talking about that for 14. That Jeff, you're the one who always is the master on this discussion, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know that there's an interest there. I know there's interest here. There's no interest. I mean, it's like, where do we go from next? And this really is a workshop where we're not like deciding what we're going to do. But I can tell you, based on the math, it's 5-2 with the current proposal, so it fails if you look at it that way. But we all have said our own way, including the mayor, that maybe there's something in the middle. But what is that middle? What time frame are we under in that?
I could make a suggestion here. We've learned a lot we had a community value-based discussion here tonight, maybe the best one we've had in my entire career. So I want to thank everybody from the staff perspective. This is incredibly helpful. This is more of a journey and an evolution and a policy discussion than a typical zoning case has been mentioned here. I think what we could do is we have a lot of venues to have further discussions about this. They usually take place over the summer in terms of strategic planning, long-range financial planning, and that's where we set our work agendas. And every time we've taken some time to really thoughtfully address what we're going to work on and how we're going to spend staff resources, we've pretty much found that alignment with the community. So perhaps we might want to take a look at this in the next round of strategic planning, which usually takes place several months out. It'll be over the summer.
Which would then go in 2014.
Yeah, then that's when we set the 2014 work plan.
Okay.
And I'm hearing 5-2 if you're looking for a head count, but I'm also hearing more dialogue, more community discussion, and community values issue that could play out over the next several months. So staff suggestion would be that if you're looking for the next venues, we do have venues and opportunities that come up. If we want to do it, and a lot could change between now and then, and we'll keep in contact with council members between that point and then.
There you have it.
Jeff, do you got anything?
I just want to go back to one of Bill's comments. I think we need to be very careful about deciding which animals are healthy and safe for our backyards. If you go to my backyard right now, you will find lots of frozen dog feces. And I'm sure the Dominks on one side and the Betelov on the other would say if we got a thaw and a rain tonight and tomorrow, that there'd be runoff from my yard. So I don't want to say that we're just talking chickens. I mean, we talked a lot about comparing dogs and chickens tonight. I don't think that they're too far off as far as pets. Dogs don't produce eggs and have a sustainable culture. But I just want to be very careful that we're not setting ourselves up for a different debate about other ordinances that may already be in our code. I think we need to be very careful about that. And one last comment. We've talked a lot about community development and code enforcement. We are driven by complaints for enforcement and code issues. We address every complaint that's been given to us, whether it's a dog, a chicken, a bird, a peacock, whatever it may be. and there have been some peacocks in the village before. That's why you're laughing a little bit about that.
And potbelly
Yeah,
pigs.
and potbelly pigs. So, I mean, we do have the talent to look at it. The staff report said that other communities who changed their chicken ordinance found a little bit of an increase, but not enough to sustain a full-time employee. I think we could address that with the proper controls and measures and expectations to not only our staff, but to the customer. So, you know, I hope we can continue this conversation, if not now, right through strategic planning, action planning for 2014, but that still doesn't do anything to the folks that just had to give their chickens up. And that's a big change for their life that we just made. And granted, yes, they were non-compliant, so they also made a choice, but we have to realize that what we do on Tuesday nights affects people, whether it's 20 or 14,000 or 48,000, whatever our current number is, so.
Yeah, I
That's
agree.
end of speech, I'm sorry about that, but it's just.
I agree with that, Commissioner, I don't want to sound harsh about it, but the preferred way is to ask for a change and then embrace it once it's made. It's to seek permission, not ask for forgiveness.
I agree.
And I think most people would agree with that.
Yep.
Again, I think there's still something to be looked at here. I'll say it before, I'll say it again, but, you know, that's a real slippery slope that starts to resemble some of the frozen stuff in your backyard.
All right, not to open up a whole dialogue again with the residents, but if you have something that can add to this, you're welcome to speak.
Thank you. Steve Connors again, 5709 Hillcrest. Well, wow, talk about swing of emotion. Felt great after hearing everything came out tonight. Obviously, some disappointment hearing what there is tonight. I think that this is two different things. I think this is, first of all, are we going to be open to still moving forward to see if we can find a solution that works for the community? And then the second thing is if there's a decision that yes, then it is, what is that solution? So I hope that we could at least continue to take that first step and work on the people that you have here that have passion to help you figure out what that solution can be. I do think there's a little bits of some contradicting statements that are being said tonight about the slides going from 500 to 15,000, 14,000. I mean, if on one end, if you're concerned about a big population, that would say on the other end that there's going to be a bigger population that wants this and there's more reason to do it. So there's some contradicting concern about that statement that's being made. And the last thing I'll just say is as someone who's with family, who's really passionate about this, tell us what we need to do to help you. We're here to help. We want to help. We want to make this happen. We know that people have got concerns. We don't want to shut those concerns out. We want to figure out how to get past those concerns and how to make sure we can adequately deal with this. So I'm just pleading that you can keep this on the table somehow and let us be involved. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I guess the comment about talking about it later, I know that some of my colleagues were concerned when we even were going to talk about this, about the level of emotion and the engagement from the community. Not that we don't want to hear from the community, but how passionate everyone is about the issue. So my one fear is that if we put this and table it for a couple months or a year, and then we bring it up again, we're going to go through this whole process that we've just been going through for the past couple months with the...
Maybe not. I think we've learned a great deal. I know I have.
Okay.
I've got a different... No.
All right. And
Stay
then
tuned.
My other comment was, I thought that the staff proposal was a starting point, and that was something that we could adjust and talk about and work through. And I'm getting the impression that the staff proposal, well, we don't agree with it, so that's it. I mean, am I misunderstanding what's happening here? Or
I think any one of us can bring up a new business item at any time and propose whatever we want, as long as we follow through with our process.
Okay.
That would be my suggestion. It may be right back in the same circle, but that's our process, and go through that.
Thanks for letting me speak up.
Yeah, I'm all for it, you know. I think these are healthy conversations. We need to have this.
There's another comment. I don't know if you want to permit me.
All right, this is the last one. Go ahead.
across the fence. I appreciate it's been a long night. I didn't think.
No, and I have no doubt that the comments will continue to come in as they have before by phone and email.
And they should.
And it's interesting because this is the first time I've ever come up to the city council or anything. It was a New Year's resolution. I told my wife, I'm going to get more involved. And it was before this came up, this issue, when this issue came up, but I found it was a very interesting process. And I guess I don't mind saying, I guess a question. They said there's 509 parcels that are eligible. Is that true or false?
That's true.
Of those 509, how many people actually have chickens on those properties?
We have no idea.
I don't think we know because we haven't been any complaints.
Not sure, 20?
There's no permitting
We don't
process.
code it.
So we don't know.
We don't
Part of the code enforcement problem.
The only way you really learn
If you had a
if you
venture,
have
I
a
guess?
chicken
Right.
20?
is through complaints.
That's my guess.
So we don't
That
know.
would probably, forgive me for disagreeing, I'd probably guess less than that.
Or
Because
10.
Because, right, but I agree with a little bit with the reasoning that's going on up here. It's like the correlation, if you can take his number, 509 or 510 to make it round, and then say, well, how many of those people are having chickens? There might be 2 or 3 or even 10, and then scale that up. I mean, I don't see that that's going to become this 13,000 number that folks are concerned about, for one.
But it's not it's
It's not
the
the people.
ability of 13,000 people coming here and having chickens. That's what scares me. You went from 500, which we don't even know how many people have it, right? And now we're going to open a door and say, okay, 13,500 people, you can now have chickens. That is what scares me.
It's 26 times more eligible lots.
Yeah.
Which could mean 26 times more chicken coops than currently exist, whatever that number is.
Yeah.
And like one of the problems I have is, how many years did it take to find some of the chicken coops that we have now? And now multiply that by 26.
I think what some people would tell you as well is that if you have 14,000 parcels that can do this as of right, which 509 can do right now without having to advise their neighbors, without having to have any neighborhood involvement, 0. That if you now expand it to 14,000, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be concerned that, well, that can just happen, and I didn't even get a notice, I didn't have an opportunity to get involved, I wasn't invited to be part of it. All the wonderfully warm things we heard tonight, those opportunities don't exist. Is there a way to individualize it to a neighborhood, to a community, to where you're not painting 14,000 parcels with that brush? I'm not closing the door on that. I think there is, frankly, but it's not going to be hashed out
That's why I
tonight.
support my friend there, that I would like, it would, yeah, talk about a swing of emotion. It didn't seem very encouraging that the council is, directionally wanting to follow this and follow up on this.
No, because what's been identified is, I think, is a numerically small problem. And the solution that's been proposed is enormous. I think they're disproportionate. I'm not saying that there isn't a solution to the numerically small problem, nor am I saying that we're going to give up trying to find one. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying the one that's been proposed is like trying to kill a mosquito with a hand grenade.
Now, you got to realize, though, and remember, when you look at what staff had given to us, the report out, it was based on information that they gathered from the council meeting we had. So, I mean, this was basically what they heard and what they put into paper for us. So there's a lot of time, or there's a lot of area to fine tune that and really get it down to what is right and what is the Downers Grove way. I mean, that's what it really comes down to be. And it wasn't even a proposal. What staff report was, it's just too big at the end of the day. It's too much. And that's where I think you're going to get into the problems with the feces and all the other stuff we heard about tonight. 20 chicken coops and, whatever, I don't think you're going to have those kind of issues. It's now, like the mayor said, it's where your communications with your neighbors are. So, if you got and I'll open this to everyone, and I think all my colleagues will say it, if you got an idea, email it to us. I mean, what do you think is the right solution? I mean, I don't know if a setback is the right solution. Yeah, I don't know, But
I think to follow up on the comment about bringing the community along, it's a good idea, but, how do we gauge that? How do you gauge that the community's ready for a change? I don't know.
Well, it's really bringing the most immediately affected individuals along. And essentially rezoning 14,000 parcels doesn't do that. As I think Bob illustrated with his diagram, you're essentially not even communicating with the largest chunk of people who are potentially affected. That's not consistent with the way we normally do things.
Maybe I should clarify, I don't have some fear that we're gonna have 13,000 people who want chicken.
No, no one's suggesting that.
Or do I even think that we're gonna have 28 times 25 or whatever the number is now? But I don't wanna change all of the assumptions and expectations that all those parcel owners currently have today to make an accommodation for a small number of folks. That doesn't seem like the best way to go at trying to make that accommodation. I don't know what that accommodation looks like, but rezoning effectively all those folks who are not even aware of it and changing their potential future uses, it doesn't seem like the best way to try and solve the relatively small problem in front of us.
Thank you.
I'd rather focus on the small problem.
We appreciate it. Dave, do you have a follow-up, and then we're going to end the meeting?
Just great direction from council. I'll keep in contact with each and every one of you and see how, when, and if this comes up again. Look forward to reporting out the results of tonight's committee meeting at the next council meeting.
Great, thank you. Thank you and good night.
Somebody's got to move to adjourn.
Oh, that's right.
Move to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you.
Can you
Aye.
get the vote?
Both roll call.
Somebody get to vote?
Yeah, aye.
Aye, aye.
All right, good night.